Welcome to another episode of the Emulsion Podcast, a show for chefs who want to think better, increase their performance, and believe that it's possible to take lessons from what others have learned. I am your host, Justin Khanna, and I'd love to continue the conversation with you from this episode on my online Circle community. There you can share your 2 cents and learn about supporting the show on justinkhanna.com/support. For your convenience, it's also linked up in the description of your podcast player. Let's get into the show. My guest today is Chef Stephen Clare. Stephen owns and operates Salt and Acid, a photography service focused on food service clients, but also providing services like event production and menu development and video services as well. How I know Stephen, though, dates back to both of our times at the Culinary Institute of America in upstate New York, where he became, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first students to complete an externship at Alinea and return to school for that education, which for me at the time was like incredibly interesting because that's where I wanted to do my externship. And on top of that, he's also taken on work with professional athletes to plan consistent and nutritionally optimized meals for these high performers. If you enjoyed this interview, I absolutely recommend you listen to my conversation with Andrea Correa. She also has a fascinating story of crossing over from staging at places like El Bulli and working at Noma to becoming a really well-experienced trapeze performer. So that might make your ears perk up if you're interested in these types of like crossing over from performance in kitchens to performance in athletics. And if at any point you would like to pause and check out Stephen online or any of the specific linkable things that we discussed, please do check out the show notes, which are always available in the description of this podcast down below, or always available on justinkhanna.com/media. Thanks for being here, man. I'm excited to see you.
My pleasure, man. It's been a long time. We've known each other, 10 years?
It's coming up on that time, and you've been the times that we've run into each other have been either like very critical decision points for me, or just like hilarious run-ins in random locations when like we didn't plan on seeing each other, but we end up seeing each other. And I thought a fun place that we could start is to dissect a compliment I'm about to give you, because I don't think that I had the words to articulate it when we first met, like you said, almost 10 years ago. But you have this incredible kind of get after it, take it on the chin, yup, things are going to go wrong, but we'll learn from it and show up tomorrow type of confidence about you and how you approach work and even how you interact with authority figures. Where does that come from for you?
I think that comes from combat sports. So I grew up in high school, and in college I wrestled. And I think, you kind of said something that has been a reoccurring theme throughout my life, which is I think we intuitively understand things. And then a beautiful thing about aging and a really wonderful thing about like mentorship is later you start to put good language around these principles, right? Like almost like nobody wants like a poetic 20-year-old, right? Like that's kind of cringeworthy. But like now that I'm so many years older than that, like people want to hear me say things like, like I was helping a young fighter he's a savage. He hasn't been training anywhere near as long as me. We probably weigh the same, and he manhandles me, and it's infuriating and embarrassing. And I was helping him get ready for a competition, and like part of me was relishing in his suffering through the weight cut and stuff like that. But he kept talking about how scared he was, just like, oh man, like And I told him, like, there's nothing you're gonna do in 3 weeks to make yourself a better fighter. What you can do is get good sleep, have a good easy weight cut, warm up every day, and then just get in there and believe in your hands. And so when you're saying like how I interact with authority figures and things like that, and the confidence, I think it comes from there's nothing you're gonna do in a short period of time to improve, right? But you can just, what can you control? You control your stress levels to a certain degree, right? Like, we've all worked in places where every day walking to work, you're like, yep, today's the day. Today's the day they're going to fire me. And every night walking home, like, I cannot believe I didn't quit my job tonight, right? And like, you can only do that for like a year, right? And then like, just, you're out of lubricant and things overheat and gaskets blow.
Yeah.
But, that's why cars have a red line. Like, you can get here, but you can't stay here.
Right.
And I think it comes from just understanding that, like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But, like, just get in there and believe in your hands. you know, and if you're a cook, get them believe in your hands. Like, believe that, like, no matter whatever is printed, you'll be able to take care of it. Like, it might not be in the time horizon that people expect from you, you know, but you'll survive, you know. And the first time ever that I realized like that wasn't enough was like a cripple. Like, that was like my whole philosophy. And then to find out like that's not enough. Like, I mean, Grant Achatz pulled me aside one time and was like, everyone who doesn't get fired makes it through service. That's not a benchmark. I'm looking for the guys that make it look easy. He's like, and Steven, you don't make it look easy. And I was just like, oh, like, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, after that, like, I think first I think confidence, there's like confidence, and then there's like the finesse aspect.
Totally.
Right. And I guess a big part of it is like understanding that, like, even at your worst, if you're trying and if you try hard and you care, you're probably going to get a lot of second and third chances.
Yeah.
And you'll have that opportunity to polish. Right. And so I just, very early, I worked, you know, I competed athletically, and then I just worked really hard in the kitchen, and I was always given opportunity. And, you know, I can't think of a single stage I went on where like the door was closed. Like, I staged at Blue Hill at Stone Barns. They definitely did not offer me a job. But they were like, hey, like, you know, we want to keep an eye on you as you develop. We think you have a lot of potential. Like, they were very nice. They're very, very nice. But, you know, and I've been fired. You know, I've been fired from jobs. But also it's like one of those things where, like, you kind of quit, you kind of got fired, you know.
Sure. The interesting point is, and this is literally just flashing back into my brain now, is I'm almost certain you told me a very similar, I know that you were talking about like in the moment on the performance of that night, but you gave me some very similar advice around how I should be thinking about an externship at Alinea. From the sense of like, you're not going to come out the other side of that being able to like run a or like open another Alinea, you know, like don't expect to learn how to cook at this externship. And the most striking part about that time, and just speaking with you as a student who was also kind of like one rung above the ladder of where I was from that sense, like,
yeah,
we were both still culinary school students. And again, I don't mean to like psychoanalyze you, but like it was all very direct information. Like, you didn't seem to be parroting information that you had read from a book or advice you had received from a mentor, and you were just kind of like passing it down to me in this kind of like, you know, Aesop's fables kind of way. It was very much so like, here's how I process this experience, and here's what you should be thinking about. And it was like super, super valuable. I don't know if you have anything else to share there, but that was like, that was unlike anything that I had ever kind of like dealt with at that time in my career.
You know, I think in a lot of aspects like that, I forget how you got a hold of me. I think you like slipped a note in my mailbox, which is like amazing that I ever opened that mailbox. Like those CIA mailbox. I can't remember if there was a reason we had to open them. I can't remember if like there was like a grade that went. Yeah, so like all the more miraculous, because like I'm not somebody who like I'm 38 years old and I'm not diligent about that shit now. Like, people will be like, did you get my birthday card? And it's a month after my birthday. I'm like, oh, I should probably go check the mail.
Well, it was like career services had told me, and again, this is like, you know CIA culture. It's like, they don't want any of the students to get unpaid externships because it's just like the return to school rate is abhorrently low, and it's just like, it's not a good look for them that they're sending students out into these unpaid experiences when, you know, so much of the draw to that school, and most schools at that time was like, you're going to be able to graduate and make a lot of money, XYZ. And so I was like, so is there anyone who has done an externship that I can talk to about this? And they're like, in such a movie way, they're like, well, there's this one guy. And I was like, okay, so I have to find this person. And, you know, like directory nonsense, I think, you know, like different blocks, you basically don't talk to anybody outside of your block unless you run into someone in the dining hall. And so, yeah, I think I wrote a letter and I brought it to the mailroom and I said, hey, if there's a mailbox with the name Stephen Clare, like, can you put this in there, please? And that's how we got in touch, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I think I even told you, I was like, I mean, there's serious pros and there's serious cons, but like I'm like, all it's gonna do is just toughen you up. Like
Yep.
you're just gonna learn to work really hard and take a lot of abuse, which is a skill. You know, it's a skill a lot of people don't have. You know, I've seen like kids throw stuff in the garbage and storm out, and I'm like, that was your breaking point? Like, oh my God! Like I've had heroes say so much worse to me. You know, like
I don't know if I've just it tends to resurface on the internet every, I don't know, 3 to 6 months whenever people are feeling, you know, bored on Twitter or Facebook or wherever they're posting these thoughts. But it's this idea of like, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because there's this general aversion to people who spend time at these higher end restaurants, and then there's this like weird stigma that you should be able to come out as this, you know, high end chef who can cook all these sorts of things. But I think what you're saying, and what, you know, maybe the audience can take away, is that there's like these it's not going to show up on the plate necessarily, like the skills that you get at these places.
yeah. So you know, it's yeah. I think so you know, I'm not artistic in the least bit in any way, shape, or form, and I actually like I take a lot of pride in like, you know, I think a lot of life goes through these like cycles, right? Like the
Sure.
first day you show up at CIA, like you want to be a chef, not a dishwasher, not a line cook. 20 years later, you're like, dishwashers and line cooks are badass. You know, like I'll be a cook. Like,
1000%.
you know, it's great. You know, and so like there's a beauty in that, and there's like the whole, you know, we all go through a phase where we're like, comfort food's gross. Like I want to do fine dining, and then you're like, dude, I want to make fucking comfort food. Like I want to make like badass, you know, and like even if it's, you know, for me, I'm in a place professionally where I like to challenge myself. I'm not for me. I don't find it particularly interesting if you put 4 ounces of fat on 8 ounces of carbohydrates that people think that tastes good. You know, so I do a lot of stuff of like tofu purees, cut thin and then sous vide celery root as like a pasta. Like I like to put a caloric budget on like the food I make. And to me, that's just a fun way to challenge myself. But like, even today, I still spar, I still wrestle, and I have a lot of mad hours of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Like sometimes I'll train with my eyes closed, you know, and it's nothing that I'm going to do that unless I'm trying, you know, but I generally, you don't want to let your opponent know, you know, you don't want to let your training partner know you're doing that. Like,
Right.
it's a little rude. But, you know, it's like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. And that's like a really good way to like hone your skills. Like you want to make like really good dishes when it counts. Like make really good dishes, and like don't let people know they're vegan. Don't let people know they're gluten free. Like tell them after the tasting menu, like that 8-course tasting menu was 1,800 calories. You know,
Nuts.
do that and have it stand on its own. And then if you do go to 11 Madison Park and they're like, hey, go in the walk-in and make it, it's like, oh, great. I mean, hopefully by the time, you know, hopefully you should be past that point. But, you know, I think like as far as what's going to show up on the plate, right? Like, I think everybody has their, you know, there's a writer named Aldo Leopold, and he's from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and he did a lot for like shaping our parks department. He talked about game management, ethics of hunting. He wrote a book called Sand County Almanac, and he talked about the difference between morality and ethics. You know, and ethics are more like a societal standard, and morality is like deeply personal. And I think a lot of that crossover philosophy applies to everything, right? I think as an industry, we kind of have ethics, and then we have deeply personal morals, right? Like, you know, we're all starting to come around that like maybe super cheap fast food is the best thing for the world, but like 1947, 1936, it would have been great to have dollar hamburgers, right? Get those calories out. If you're watching your baby starve to death, you give them refined sugar. You great, wonderful. Give me a bag of sugar, you know. And so, what I'm getting at is like, ethically, I think putting yourself in a La Bernardin, a Per Se, and a Linea getting beat up, getting thick-skinned, learning to work really hard. And then, like, you know, there's something wonderful about restaurant scoring an achievement and knowing that, like, you were, you know, Grant Achatz, when I did my stage, sat me down and he said, do you want to do a lot at a good restaurant or do you want to do very little at a great restaurant? You know, and doing very little at a great restaurant is kind of cool, right? Just to be part of that. And, like, there's a lot of similarities. You know, probably better than me at this point. You've been in some wonderful restaurants. It's almost religious, right? It's a bunch of people working as hard as they can on something that, like, really, when you take a step back, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's somebody's fucking dinner. You're not performing heart surgery. The only reason it matters is, like, somewhat religious, right? It's like, can we all do this? You know, like, can we all carry this? Can we make this something exceptional? Can we make this, how much can we nurture the guests? Like, you know, if we were in a college wrestling room, we would say we punish ourselves so that we can punish our opponents. But, like, we're punishing ourselves so that we can nurture our guests. You know, we would never want the guests to know how hard we work because maybe they would feel uncomfortable or like they should be enjoying it more. You know, but you know, Thomas Keller was giving a speech and he was saying, like, he was talking to future industry leaders and he was saying, who should be promoted? Does the best cook make the best sous chef, make the best chef de cuisine, make the best manager, make the best? He's like, well, historically, that's the way we've done it. And he's like, but I am working towards and would like to someday promote the best teacher to sous chef. And it's like, you know, I've tried that and it's worked sometimes and it's not worked others. You know, it's like, it was very difficult to solve for in a kitchen. Like, how do you find those attributes when those aren't those that, you know, how do you find an element that doesn't rise to the top in a pressurized environment? Like, you know, you don't skim the bottom and say, like, the guy who goes down every night and walks around with a chip on his shoulder, he should be the sous chef. Like, obviously that you can't reward that. You know, so you described somewhat of the predicament he was in, but he very much felt that the number one attribute he wanted in his kitchen were nurturers. And he said, people who would rather build and stoke a fire than sit by it themselves. He looked for people who would rather be building and stoking a fire for others to enjoy than be seated at one themselves. And he felt that made the best chef. And, you know, if I can make assumptions on elaborating on his word, I think that's because it's hard. It's hard work. And if your motivation is because you want a restaurant someday, like that's a perfectly healthy ambition. I don't know how far down a dark tunnel you're going to walk for that, right? Like, I mean, success always feels so far away when you're at a Linea or a Per Se or a French Laundry or a La Bernardin. Like, I mean, how successful did you feel when you were a commis or a chef de partie? Yeah, feel fucking useless, feel dumb. And it's when you come out the other side, like so my dad was in Vietnam and he was saying that all the bad memories get compressed into one memory and you remember that it was hard. But over time, all the good memories expand. And that's, like, certainly been true with, like, my culinary experience. But, you know, I think you have to really be a nurturer if you want, which is so ironic because I didn't feel any of those restaurants were nurturing womb-like environments.
No.
But I think that's, like, the best quality. And the more you can develop that, and, you know, it's twofold, right? There's a clinical psychologist, and he wrote a book, and he was talking about he worked on a rail yard, it was like a desirable government job, and the amount of bullying he saw was it took him many years to kind of digest how he felt about it. And what he realized is those jobs, while well paying, are very hard work. You're in the summer, you're carrying iron. And what he said is the way those jobs are rendered tolerable is through razzing, shit-talking, abuse. And he was saying that, like, it's a true meritocracy. If I say, hey, John, that's a dumb jacket you have on today, but John zings me back and his is funnier, he wins. Like, it's a meritocracy, right? If you make fun of somebody, like, I remember very clearly, I had my first restaurant in Brooklyn, and I had a line cook who was actually an architecture student. And I was relentless on him. I was so abusive. But it was like great. But it was great. Like he was my guy. and I used to be like, why do you want to go be a bad architect when you're on track to be a mediocre chef? Like, you should just stick this out, like, let's save your parents some money. And one day I was like making fun of him, and the owners of the restaurant, I forgot what was said, but it was like they're like, how's Kyle doing? I was like, he's fine. And that night, like, Kyle just like couldn't get it together. Like, he just wasn't, it's like putting the beet salad dressing on the frisette. I'm like, what do you do? And so like I was in front of everybody. I was like, Kyle, are you playing a joke on me? Did you hear I told the owners like you're good? And so now as a joke to make us laugh, you're fucking everything up. Like, well done. That was great. That was a great joke. But like, let's actually do service. And like, he nailed me back. He was like, chef, I'm so sad. Like, I didn't even think that you knew the sets anymore. Every night you're on Expo, you're coming in at 3 o'clock. And I was like, all right, like, ooh, like, like, good work. And it's like, I think, I'm torn because I certainly would never want to like advocate for bullying.
Sure. Sure.
But I think that there's, when you're working 60 hours a week and you're running a restaurant with your name on it and you're clearing $50,000 a year with no benefits like I was, and I was happy to be making $50,000. I was making $52,000 a year, $1,000 a week as an executive chef of a restaurant in Brooklyn. I think I was 28. So I was young for the role, but no benefits, and I was working, a short day was 10 hours, a long day was 15. And I was working 6 days a week. Monday was my day off. The way you render that tolerable is through, you got to let the steam out somehow. And I was never, I don't think I ever got out of line with it. I mean, you'd have to, to dig through my past and,
sure,
cancel me to find out. But, I think, and so I think that like the thick skin can really benefit you. And I think that like we kind of all know that like there's like a standard that people should be treated, and I think there's kind of like ethical standards. And I don't know, I think what's going to be reflected on a plate, what type of chef you're going to be, that's deeply personal. And I think a lot of that has to do with your personality, your disposition. Are you more risk adverse? Are you a bigger risk taker? Are you someone who would ride a dirt bike? Are you somebody who would rather be in the middle of an Uber XL with your seatbelt on? I think all that stuff translates, and who you really are comes through like in a tasting menu. So, I worked at Alinea, but my food is nothing like Alinea's. My food is more like, I would embarrass myself to say who I would wish my food was like. But, I think that you develop everywhere you go, you kind of pick up skills and you'll use bits and pieces of that. But like, I remember being 27 years old and cooking dinner for a girl. And she was like very excited. She was very complimentary. And she was like, your food is so good. And I remember having this sense of panic of like, oh, I'm not ready to have my own food identity yet. Like, I'm not, like, I can't have a my food. Like, there's, like, no, like, my food is yet to be decided. Like, will it be fine dining? Will it be fun? And I just remember feeling this, like, sense of dread at hearing, like, your food is so good or whatever, because I was like, I'm not ready for that. And I was the chef of a restaurant at that time. Like, so, but that was just like a cash grab. Like, they needed somebody who could come in and execute service, and I needed more money, so.
Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I think that it's a big rant that I go on from the sense of like cook to chef. Like I'm actually a big advocate of people, if they're working in a professional kitchen, to call themselves a chef sooner than they get a title for it, just because you will take on those mental responsibilities, like the negative self-talk you might be having with yourself might change. But so like, and that's certainly a journey that I went through when I moved back from Europe to the US, and I was like doing pop-ups to do that dance, like, and I say dance from almost like a comical circus, like street performer sense of like, it's a chef trying to figure out what their food looks like kind of thing. Like any for someone who is starting to navigate that or wanting to kind of like, well, the next thing on the docket is I got to figure out what my food looks like advice from that time, best practices, things to avoid, misconceptions, all of that. Speak to that person.
Yeah, so I had a really unusual path. Like, I had some pretty good marks on my resume, and I was very fortunate. I mean, I was very, very fortunate. I was living in New York City on my sister's couch. And I was fortunate in that, like, I had a big sister who was a lawyer. She wasn't, at the time, certainly wasn't like a millionaire, but she's very generous and she's amazing, So I was able to work for free at a lot of cool places. And so my first job in New York City was at Del Anima. And I got fired right away. 3 days. And it was a very small kitchen, if anybody's been there. It's like a 3-man line. And my sister tricked me into getting the job. Like, she was like I moved to New York to work on the American Stock Exchange, and it didn't really pan out. I didn't like it. It wasn't working. And I had worked in taquerias and stuff in San Diego. So she was like, you should work in restaurants in New York City, And I was I've been there, done that, I've been a chef already. And so we went to Del Anima, and they had a friend whose cousin was the pastry chef, So I was eating dinner there, and I was it was an open kitchen. I was like, oh, I'm not and she called the manager. She's like, oh, my brother's a chef. He's in town from San Diego. So they're like, oh, we would love to have him come in. And so then I was like, and I was never the type to be like, oh, I'm scared, I'm not going to do this. I was like, yeah, no, whatever.
What's the worst that can happen? Yeah.
Yeah. But inside, I was, of course, I was terrified.
Sure.
I was 22. So I worked on my third day. And so I came from San Diego, taquerias and concert halls. Prep was in bags and you put it in, I don't I wouldn't say a step above Chili's. I'd say a sidestep from Chili's, So I knew mechanically how to turn on a range and put a saute pan on it and put food in there. But I didn't know shit. And so in the crush, the chef de cuisine at that time was named Chris Frazier, and he was about 11 feet tall, crooked glasses, sweaty, and he would grab you. It's he never wore a chef's coat. He wore a dishwasher shirt, crooked, tape all over him, and unbelievably talented chef. From that restaurant group, when people Gabe Thompson, who was the executive chef and quite a mentor to me, and did a lot to help me, fired me twice, but I'll get to that later. But he always talks about he'd be like, oh, Marcus Samuels. I was at a party and Marcus Samuelson was like, oh, I ate at L'Artusi, and that dish you did with the rabbit, and he'd be like, yeah, that was Frazier's dish. It's everything that a big chef's that dish was amazing. That was Chris Frazier. Chris Frazier is just a crazy man. And one night in the middle of, he looks at me, he's like, Steven, go get me fennel. And I was like, yes, chef. What's fennel? And he's like, fuck! In the middle of the restaurant. Screams fuck, throws the pan down, food hits the ceiling, he storms off. And then, I kind of, I'm like, what do I do? And he comes up, with fronds on it and everything, goes, this is fucking fennel! In the middle of, a restaurant on 6th Ave. So Gabe, at right about the closing gate's like, sit down, let's send you some food. And he comes over and says, so this isn't really working, But he was very nice to me. He was very nice to me. He gave me a lot of guidance, and he walked me to another restaurant and got me a job there. And I just put away their orders and cleaned up and did that type of stuff, which was good. It was a lot of product knowledge. Then they opened a restaurant called L'Artusi on West 10th Street, and he invited me back, and I became part of the opening staff for that, and it was great. And then he was very helpful. He encouraged me. His wife was a CIA graduate. He introduced me to the Culinary Institute of America and wrote me a letter of recommendation, helped me get a scholarship. My sister helped me because I'm not, I certainly at that time, I didn't have, good, I wasn't poetic. So they helped me write my application letter and that type of stuff. And so I got into CIA. And I think that, I think I was very fortunate in that I just worked really hard, and people saw that I worked hard and they cared. Matt Lambert, who's the chef of the Busket Room, which got a Michelin star right away. I worked under him at Public. And I remember he called me in the walk-in box one night, and he was like, "You're fucking terrible." He's like, "But I could tell you care a lot." And that's why he's like, "I could be a lot meaner to you. I know I'm mean to you, but I could be a lot fucking meaner." I'll always remember, like, you can be meaner than you are. Like, I feel like we're at, like, the maximum level of meanness. And he's just like, no, you know. But, you know, I went to Brad, the chef of a Michelin star restaurant, and I said, I just finished an externship at Alinea. It's a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I never worked the hotline. They're not really a hotline. My concern is I'm going to finish culinary school. People are going to see Alinea on my resume. They're going to expect that I'm at some level, and I'm going to go down like a sack of fucking potatoes on the hotline. And Brad looked at me, and he said, "You realize you're asking to sink my kitchen?" I said, "Yes, chef." And he goes, "All right, fuck it, let's see." And he put me on hot appetizers, and I did not disappoint. I went down so many times. There was a fryer on my station. This is how inexperienced I was after working in a 3 Michelin star restaurant with a culinary degree from the Culinary Institute of America. In the shits, I was, you know, something was fried, and I was, you know, doing that. And that was before you know, once. It only takes once, and you learn never swing the basket.
Totally.
You know, so I like go to run for something, and of course I slip on the oil and eat shit, and you know, but it's like, you know, that was very humbling to me. I cracked my head. I was bleeding, and people were like, "You need to go." I'm like, "No, I'm fine. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's good. It's good." You know, like I was like so embarrassed because I was like, of course, like what the fuck was I thinking? Moving the basket to the pass, like you're gonna drip oil, you're gonna slip and eat shit. You know, that's a lesson that I have since witnessed people learn once. You know, I've seen many cooks do that. You know, like you see a kid swinging the basket, you just kind of pull his knife forward so he doesn't have that in his hand when he eats shit. You know, because it's one of those things you could explain to somebody. You know, and they look at you and they're like, "You don't understand the type of pressure. Like, I don't have the time to bring this as a." But it's like, of course, like I worked that station for 3 years. Of course, I know what you're going through. You're just overwhelmed in the moment. You know, but. Yeah, I think it's important to put yourself out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to go down. Don't be afraid to eat shit. And like, you know, Mike Tyson didn't walk in a boxing gym and start piecing people up. Like Mike Tyson got his ass kicked. Like it wouldn't mean anything if it was, you know. And the issue is not that like you can't make good food with just a culinary degree or 4 years in a kitchen or 7 or 8 years. The problem is like you're doing a pop-up and so is Alex Atala. You know, like it doesn't take long to be able to be the toughest guy at the barbecue. But like if you want to fight for a heavyweight championship or you want to wrestle in the Olympics or you want to fight like you're going against these savages who nothing else matters. And that's also true in culinary world. Like anywhere where people are super passionate, people are going to be fucking good and they're going to work for free and they're going to crush you. You know, you would see the same thing in fashion. You would see it in photography. Like how many hours of free work has Ann Leibovitz done? I don't know. A lot for sure. You know, how many projects has she been like, this looks like shit. We're not billing them. We're going to eat it. We're going to figure out how to pay our bills. And it's like, that's who you're competing against. You're competing against, I say it again and again. I think Le Bernardin is the best restaurant in the world. It's had 3 Michelin stars since, I don't know, 1981.
Yeah.
And there's not a single person that's like, I don't think we're going to get 3 Michelin stars this year. Like, and it's like the biggest, and like nobody talks about it. But Eric Repair is like a gem of a human being. I've only met him 3 or 4 times and I've never worked under him. So I've never seen him, you know, never seen him freak out on anybody. But like everything that I've seen and you know, he's always there. Like that guy works a lot. Like if ever there was a time like he could promote somebody and be out writing cookbooks, it's now. But like by all accounts, Dan Barber's in those kitchens every day. I ate at Blue Hill with Akhtar Nawab, who's friends with Barber, and he went in the kitchen. He's like, "Chef, you're on the line tonight?" Like, fuck, you know. And he was like, Akhtar's like, yeah, Akhtar's a great American chef. He was the chef of the EU when he was like 24 years old. He had Elitaria. He ran all of Tom Colicchio's restaurants. David Chang said he's his favorite chef. You know, Akhtar Nawab's a great chef. And he's like, that guy's a great chef, but at what cost, man? Like he's he's 46 years old working the line tonight, like a line cook. Like
Sure.
he can't go. Like he's gonna break down that station. He's not getting home until 3 a.m. You know, so it's like the point is like you have to understand that like you're gonna take some lumps. You know, you're gonna make like a beet caramel ice cream. It's gonna be gross. And like the best advice I can have is have tricks up your sleeves. If you're doing a tasting menu in the beginning, if you think you need 3 purees, have 5, because like some of them might be gross. Like you know, like I would love to say like really wash it out and test it ahead of time. But like part of me, like that's kind of not really what cooking's about, you know. And like now I do a lot of like, I mean, I do a lot of like tasting menus in people's homes. It certainly did a lot before COVID. And like, yeah, like you shouldn't be pureeing on site. Your purees need to be done, things like that. But like, you still want to get in there and play a little. You know, you still want to like in my opinion, I very much like. I think it's fun to like raid the client's pantry and be like, ooh, everything bagel spice. Like, all right, let's put this with the venison. You know, like that's fun to me, right? Like going and just cooking the same thing I've cooked 100 times. So like that's like you couldn't pay me to do that. Like I don't want to do that anymore. And you know, like that's not a knock on restaurants, because restaurants are so much more complex than the menu is serving, right? Like this guy called out, it's you know, like it's this, it's, you know, 4 tables got seated at once, you know, that's like the food is like number 4 on the difficulty menu of running a restaurant. But if you're talking about doing a pop-up, like food is effectively like number 1. I mean, depending on, you know, sales.
Right.
That, but like, yeah, I think a big thing is like, you know, you win or you learn. Right, like if you know, I just have so many years of cooking that to me it's like even kind of like eating shit on a taste menu. Like I don't know that I would like necessarily be mortified by that. I think I'd kind of be like, oh cool, like,
yeah,
what did
yeah.
what did we do wrong? You know, and it's like I honestly, I mean, of course that would be mortifying, right? But I don't think it would be like. Certainly wouldn't be devastating. It'd be like, oh, like, what went wrong? Like, you know, and we love to do this thing where it's like, oh, the client's oven didn't, you know, it's like, don't blame them. Like, you know, like, have fun with it, you know? But I think the biggest thing is just really go slow, because I don't know if I'm at the top or not, but it feels like I'm at the top, and it feels like I kind of don't have a lot of places. Like, it takes... like leveling up skill sets takes it's so few and far between. Whereas like in the beginning, it's like, oh, I'm a commis. Oh my God, they're letting me butcher fish. Oh my God, I'm the butcher. Oh my God, I have keys to the restaurant. Oh my, like that's cool. Like that's cool. But like those in the beginning, absorbing those like skill sets is really wonderful, and it's something that I think I had a lot of insecurity about admitting my naivete in the beginning, that I almost wanted to be like, like this ain't shit, you know, whereas like I wish like I had approached it more childlike and kind of been like, oh, that's so cool, like, oh my God, like you can make salmon, you can make a dish from the meat on the collar of a fish, like that's so cool. And like I wish I had been more enthusiastic with the sous chef rather than be like, yeah, cool, it's our job. You know, like, because like if a sous chef is showing you something, he wants that. You know, he's like, I'm bored, let me show this kid something. And when the kid's like, you know, like I guess that would be my advice. Is like, don't be too cool. You know, like be enthusiastic, have a big smile, be excited, and like, you know, like the other thing that I was told very early is like you have to be the sous chef before somebody will give you the title. Like
1,000%.
Yeah, like you have to like offer to help with inventory. Like
yep.
when I was a sous chef at La Esquina, before I even started, I asked Akhtar if I could do an inventory, and I did a whole inventory of the restaurant, which he was fucking fine to let me do. But then I knew where everything was.
Right.
Like when I needed pumpkin seeds, I knew where they were.
And probably also got this experience I don't know. I always thought it was this thing where like only the sous chefs talk to the purveyors, and that first time you get told to call the purveyor, it's like whoa. Again, like those little moments where it's like you're, yeah, so interesting. The interesting point to kind
You
of
know what's funny though? Not to interrupt you.
No,
but you know
no.
what's funny about this? Like even now, like when you said call the purveyors, I'm like, fuck, I want to call the purveyors. But like that's the thing is, I remember being so excited, and now I'm just like, oh my god.
Yep.
Like I like in my head, I was like, show me a kid like that. I'll let him place my fucking orders right now.
Anytime you can call. Yep.
Call Alfredo for me.
No, it's true.
But that's the thing. Don't like diminish those. Like enjoy those. Like be excited those as a young cut.
Yeah. So you're like the perfect person to, semi-vent to about this. But I have this. It's a couple of like ideas, patterns, trends that I'm noticing in the industry that I'm like incredibly passionate about. I hesitate to use the word fixing, but it's kind of more like be the change you want to see kind of thing. And it's this idea of like the lowest common denominator getting like lower in like skill level. And then there's also this combination of like chef saying that good help is really hard to find. And then I also feel that because of that lowering, the top performers, the really ambitious ones, the people who are hungry for the information are like critically underserved. Like there's not enough resources for those individual people. And then it's also, again, this point of food media talking shit about working for free, unpaid externships. Oh, so-and-so worked at this place, and I went to their pop-up and it wasn't very good, type of... Or like I hired this person and they said they worked at Noma and they only picked herbs for 6 months and they can't really cook kind of thing. I think that is directly and like fundamentally opposed to what I think you and I are saying, which is when you see someone at that stage in their career, they're almost like underneath the compound curve. Like you have the person who is kind of like moving linearly, but then there's this person who is kind of like working, and there's going to be a point, and I am a testament to this. Like when I moved to Europe, I got thrown on the entremet station, got completely crushed. The chef that hired me was told, opening team of grace, worked at French Laundry, did an externship at Per Se, all this stuff, but I worked cold stations at all those restaurants. And I get to the entremet station, and I get completely chewed out by the sous chef who was who previously was at a 2-star from Paris, and then my station partner was from a 2-star in Amsterdam, and it was just like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why did we bring this American into the kitchen who supposedly has this resume, but he fucking sucks? But because of all this experience of like organization, thick skin, like we're talking about, it kicked in, and I was a sous chef after 10 months at that restaurant,
Yeah.
So it's like, there's something missing that's not being talked about enough through these kinds of experiences and developing these sorts of skills. And I'm just very passionate about like not letting it die, but also not, continuing these things that you and I are agreeing are ultimately harmful, Yeah,
I mean, so I'm a bad guy to talk about this because like, I'm just so comfortable with confrontation and violence, right? I got sober at 21. I've been sober 16 years. I was 23 years old, sponsoring 40-year-old men, telling them to get their shit together. I have a horrible cauliflower ear, and I won't mention the restaurant, but I won't change the names either. But so the sous chef, I fucked something up. There was a product that was like called sweet chili sauce, and it went with like a scallop's fish, and it was a fucking bitch to me. Like it was like a case of ginger mandolin cooked in caramel with like that. Like, and I went in one morning. I was the tournant. I went in one morning and I was like, oh, we're out of sweet chili sauce. Sure. And I'm like grabbing people, like, we're out of sweet chili sauce. And so like people are like, fuck, and they're like, mandolining ginger. And the sous chef comes in and he's like, fuck, are we? I'm like, yeah. And the chef de cuisine comes in like a little hungover. And he's like, what's going on? I'm like, we're out of sweet chili sauce. He goes, okay, who spotted that? I'm like, Steven. He goes, hey, Steven, you fucking saved the day, mate. Great. About 8 minutes later, he comes out of the walk-in with 2 22-quart Cambros and like, he goes, "Hey, Steven, you think this is enough to make it through service, you fucking idiot?" You know, and it's like, and I was just like, oh my God. You know, it's like effectively an inexhaustible supply. You know, like he had to have somebody help him. He couldn't even open it. And I was just like, oh my God. You know, of course, everybody's just like, you fucking dumbass, right? It's like, and so like fast forward like 4 hours later, the sous chef is like furious, you know, and still just like, I was like, oh, well, you win some, you lose some, bro. Like, I don't know. I don't have the excuse of being hungover, but I wish I did. You know, and so like the guy wouldn't drop it. And eventually I just looked at him and I said, look, you don't know anybody who knows anybody that can kick my ass. So I don't know where the fuck you want to go with this. If you want to keep this up, I'm happy to go into the locker room or right here and fight you and fucking embarrass you in front of the entire kitchen staff. Or we can get on with service. I would like to just fucking spike some things. And I just started putting out food. And the chef owner of the restaurant was like, look, I'm very hesitant to encourage that type of behavior. And he's like, but I have to say, like, I think, like, you handled it well. Like, you were like, look, where are we going with this? What do you want to do? And then you just never brought it up again. He's like, what scares me is, like, what if you had a female sous chef? Like, how do you handle that, right? And that was, like, really kind of when I realized, like, if I want to be senior, I have to temper some of that, right? I have to, like, there's a difference between being a cook and being a chef. And I think being a chef means that you have to be, like, you have to think about those types of things. You have to move, you have to think 3-4 steps ahead and think about how does that stuff affect people. But, you know, I you know, did I handle that right? Like, okay, maybe not, like, but the guy wouldn't drop. And, you know, it was, you know, the chef brought up a good question. He's like, what if that sous chef was female? She wouldn't drop it. It's like, yeah, I mean, that is a good question. Like,
from the sense of like, yeah, like, what are the tools that you would use to diffuse that bomb? You know? Like,
yeah,
yeah, interesting.
You can't call her a name. You can't, you know.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
the thing also is like, you know, I've heard a lot of stories. Obviously, I was at dinner with somebody, with my wife at the time, and this woman who, from a very minor, new, short time, was in the industry and was explaining to me how sexist and racist and homophobic the culinary industry was. I mean, I had 10 times the amount of kitchen hours she did. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I'm just saying that it's really hostile to women. I was like, I think it's hostile to everybody. She's like, have you ever been sexually harassed? I was like, yeah. And she's like, you've been sexually harassed? I was like, yeah. And she's like, by who? I was like, not that it's any of your fucking business, but there was a gay guy, Ricky, who was a sous chef who used to talk to me about how much I was going to love it when he got a hold of me, and he was going to change my world, and I was going to be converted, and I was just, you know, so it's like, you know, and even then she's like, well, I think he was just, and it's like, how can you assume this stuff on behalf of Ricky? Like, why, you know, because, you know, but, so I think there are absolutely undeniable inequalities and problems in the culinary world. But I think you know, I've held my arm up and had open cabs blow past me. If I was a woman, if I was black, maybe I would feel like it was because of that, but because I am a white guy who, by all appearances, seems to have means, I just assume the guy wasn't paying attention, or he's not particularly observant, aware, or ambitious, which is why he's driving a cab to a graveyard. You know, like, it's not like the surgeon walked past, you know, it's like, cab driver didn't pick me up, couldn't get a cab. You know, so I think there's a lot of times when, if that sous chef was a female, and I said, listen, fucking bitch, drop it, or I'm gonna, blah, blah, blah. She might say, like, if I wasn't a woman, he wouldn't have felt so comfortable threatening, because if I was a man, he could have felt that. But it was a man, and I was very comfortable threatening him. So I think not, and also in sobriety, we kind of, one of the worst things you can do is think of yourself as helpless or a victim, right? So that's like always the precursor to relapse. When you hear somebody talking, they're talking about how things are being done to them. This happened to them. You know, my rent got raised. I have to move. I lost my job. When people start talking like that, it's something that a good sponsor should kind of check them on and say, like, well, okay, but, you know, did you think your rent was never going to raise? Like, did you do anything this year to prepare for it? You know, like, you kind of want to show them that, like, they had an equal hand in their destiny. If somebody's bullying you based on your race, like, that's fucked up, and DM me their information, I'll go punch them in the mouth, right? But, like, if somebody says, like, you know, are you doing this as a practical joke because I told the owners you were good and you, like, my thing is, like, I don't think you do yourself any favors when you take things personally, and when you also have to understand, like, that guy above you on the rung, usually it's not that super accomplished senior rich guy. You know, Marcus Samuelson ain't calling people names, you know, but like 9 managerial steps beneath him, that might be happening.
Right.
You know, but you know, that's because we're in like a really high pressure environment. There's very little money. There's a lot of work to do. And the way that those are rendered tolerable sometimes is through exchange, venting steam, be it appropriate or inappropriate. But I think it's really important to not, you know, to try and find as much of your own internal empowerment as possible, and know that, like, you know, there's a great book by David Goggins called You Can't Hurt Me.
1,000%.
You know, and, like,
so good.
Fuck, man. If I had 1% of what that guy's going on, I mean, I don't know if it'd be good or bad, but, you know, but that's something that, like, you know, nobody's built like that guy.
Sure.
For better or for worse. There's David Goggins.
Right.
You know, but, like, finding that ability to just, you know, pressure can crush you or it can make diamonds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and understanding that, like, one day you'll be on your deathbed, and, like, what type of person do you want to be, and what attributes do they have? You know, like, if you're listening to this podcast, that person's you probably want them to be a pretty awesome chef. But everywhere you go is going to give you tools, even if you don't know them in the moment. You know, but, like, when I worked at Public, I got put on, like, kind of, like, they did a lot of events. And Aaron, the sous chef, who was a fucking great guy, he was like, you always hit them with, like, 20% extra food right up front, and people will relax. You know, like, the minute they walk in, there's just almost too much food. You know, don't be alarmed when they come back. Like, we'll pull it back later. You know, and, like, that, everywhere else I went, I would tell people, like, listen, when the event starts for the first 30 minutes, we're going to bombard them with food. And everybody will they might even be like, send less food. It's too much food. Whereas if you don't do that, it could be like, where's that? You know, there's supposed to be a goat cheat, you know, and you're like, lady, it's coming, relax. You know, but, like, that's something that, like, that was a lesson I didn't even know I learned in the moment. You know, and I've never forgotten that. I remember that guy telling me that clear as day. And, you know, like, it's little things like that that are just going to become, like, pebbles in your backpack. But you're not going to pick any of those up if you just get fixated on that things aren't fair, because nothing's going to be fair on this journey. Nothing's going to be fair. Nobody's going to treat you fairly. There's not a guy working 60 hours a week who just wants his whiskey and cigarette at the end of the night, who's like, what can I do for Justin because he's a really awesome dude? It's like, be here a year and then I'll fucking see when I write your prep list, right?
Or
like,
remember your name. Like,
yeah. Like, I just, you know, and I've been on both sides of that. Like, and it's not because they're these cruel-hearted dicks. It's because we've all put a ton of time and effort into somebody, and we're like, where are they? And they're like, they no-called, no-showed. Like, fuck, what? Raymond no-called, no-showed? Like, I was up till the crack of dawn cleaning that fucker's station with him because he went down, like, and then I didn't show up. So it's like, you know, there's, you know, you can't cut someone and expect them not to scar. So the thing about, like, you know, everything can't hurt. You know, you gotta just realize that, like, not everything's about you, and, like, sometimes people have bad days. And if you just hold grudges and you're just pissed about everything, like, you're gonna fucking hate everybody you work with, and you're gonna be miserable. Those guys are gonna be laughing, drinking their whiskey and cigarette at the end of the night, and you're gonna be all fucking sourpuss. And then, like, you know, that's not gonna make you good at your job. Like, being angry, you know, like, the best advice I can give to people is just kind of like, suck it up, don't take it personally, and learn. You know, learn. Just learn. Just you know, I was always eager to try and help or add my 2 cents, and like, that gets beaten out of you pretty quickly at nice places. Like, you learn to shut up and listen, which is a really good skill.
Agreed. On all of that, that was gold. I know that a lot of people are probably like mind blown right now. There's a.
I don't think anybody's mind's blown. That's pretty.
I think so. You underestimate the people who have either gotten contradicting advice that may or may not be negatively serving them in their current job position. And I've already gushed about it enough, but like hearing that was a cold splash in the face for me at the time when I met you, you know, and you were telling me these things.
Do a combat sport. Do a combat sport, because what you'll realize is, like, you are your own business. Like, you can go in there and be like, oh, coach told me to do 50 burpees. He's picking up. I will tell you, being exhausted in a fight is a very lonely feeling. Gassing out in a fight is a lonely feeling. You're looking around, you're getting beat up in your underwear, and you see a friend there, you see a friend there, and you see a referee, and none of them can do it for you. Nobody can help you. Cooking is the same way. Like, if you want to be like, oh, chef wants me to fucking do okay, like, I'm not collaring asparagus. Cool. Well, guess what? You don't fucking know how to do that. Right? Like, oh, I'm not going to shuck 300 chickpeas. Okay. No sweat off my ass. I already know how to shuck chickpeas. I already know that I can stand and do a repetitive task for 9 hours. So when I get hired to do a wedding for 30 people on a beach, I know I can shuck chickpeas for 30 people. You know, I can turn my brain off. I can listen to a podcast while I do it, if you're fortunate enough. But, like, you're your own brand. You're your own business. And, like, getting pissed and storming out of a restaurant because people weren't fair, that's not going to increase the value of your brand. And it's also, like, I will tell you, I have worked with some unfucking reasonable clients who have paid me a lot of money. And they've been very unfair. The client I have right now is I couldn't ask for a better client. The clients I have right now are wonderful. But, you know, like, even working with athletes, I work for athletes that, like, they could kill me. They could just, I mean, like, nothing, no talent or technique involved. They could just hold me down and strangle me to death like a chicken. And there's nothing I can do about it. You know, I did the whole weight cut for the guy that won the ADCC, the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, which is like the Olympics of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he won a 189-pound division. Big guy. He's a 200-pound guy. Professional fighter. Best in the world. And, like, making food for him was very easy because his mind is just so strong. Like, if you told that guy, eat kitty litter for 30 days, on day 31, he'd be like, what do I eat next, coach? He's just like, whoa, you know? Like Gianni Grippo, who's won world championships all over the place. And that guy's a savage. And that guy, like, he'll just do whatever you tell him. And then I've had super rich people from the Hamptons that are like, I'm not losing weight. And it's like, well, I don't know. I took 21 pounds off this fighter in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, he lost 21 pounds. Lost a pound a day. I don't know why you're not losing weight. I have to assume it has to do with your discipline, work ethic, and overall drive. But I will take that feedback with me, and I will see what I can do. You know, the guy's like smoking while he's telling you this. It's like,
Sure.
Sure, your personal trainer. Like, my trainer says I'm working hard. My trainer says I'm working hard. I'm really burning calories. It's like, oh, all right, well, no. This one's clearly on me. You know, but would it be better for me to tell that guy to go fuck himself and not make $65,000 over the 4-month period I was in the Hamptons? You know, the first time I went to the Hamptons to do nutritional work, I made more in 4 months than I made the previous calendar year.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it like, that story I'm telling you is not complete fabrication. That was a real conversation while the guy was smoking, explaining to me that he wasn't losing weight. And his personal trainer says he's working plenty hard.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is obviously, you know.
There's other
I guess
issues at play.
I'll have to get leaner than heart of palm lobster rolls. We'll have to take it back a notch. No mayo in those, by the way. Those like pure like tarragon and mustard on roasted heart of palm in a lettuce wrap. And it's like, I don't know how to serve you less calories, man. But if you keep stopping and getting fucking fish fillet, this ain't gonna work, you know. But yeah, it's like, but that's the type of thing, right? It's like, you can't be caught up on like what's fair, what do you deserve, how are you being treated. You can't dig your heels in on that stuff. Like, you have to just understand that, like, there'll come a day where you're going to be alone, and everything you're doing is just kind of training you for that day. And like the tougher, like, I mean, I remember there was a kid at Alinea that was like significantly younger than me, and like nothing shook him. Like just you could hit that kid with a truck, and he would just keep cooking. And I just remember being so scared of him. Like he's a nice guy, like not scared of him, but just like just being like, fuck, I'm so weak. Like I'm such a bitch compared to this guy. Like this guy, he just like he was younger, he was driven, and he just couldn't be bothered. You could be like, hey, you are so dumb. How'd you fuck that up? You'd be like, sorry, chef, I'll do better. You know, I got it. I'll remake it. No worries. Like, just no worries. You know, and just like, but like, he had my 38-year-old mindset when he was like 23 of just like, I'll put up with your shit and I'll do it, but I'm going to have this on my resume, which is going to project credibility and success. I'm going to understand how to work super clean. I'm basically hiring coaches to make me work clean, fast, and efficient and present like a killer, except I'm actually making a teeny tiny weensy bit of money while I'm doing that. You know, it's like that was a kid who was just taking everything, the good, the bad, and just making it positive. And his mind was just so strong.
That's how I see it. That's how I see it, is that you can come out the other side of and it's so telling of like these experiences truly become what you end up making them, not just from your behavior, but like the attitude that you bring into them and how you respond to all of these interactions and bad days and good days and all that stuff. Like it's and it sucks that you can have people that have that same experience from the sense of like, I spent 6 months at blank, or I worked station at blank restaurant. And like you're talking about, like the two fighter comparison, you know, like same chef, same protocol, same thing to prepare for, but just like the process is just different, and the outcome then therefore becomes different too.
Yeah, when somebody starts explaining to me like how they got screwed over, in my opinion, like I kind of like write that person off right away. When somebody's just like, oh, like, you know, like, I was about to be chef de cuisine per se, but then it's like, it's the same as like, you know, like it would be like if somebody was like, I almost got signed with the UFC, but like, you know, I sent this one tweet, and it's like, well, okay, yeah. Like, you know, like, you know, I don't know, like, sure, that stuff happens, but it's so, you know, it'd be like if somebody's like, I was in the Navy, I was almost a Navy SEAL, but you know, sure. It's like, you know, so like, I think like telling people how you got fucked over, like, we've all been fucked over.
Yep.
Totally.
Like, it's a race to the bottom of like, it's like that victim Olympics kind of thing, you know, like who had it worse? I got sent to jail for burglary, and then the owner of the restaurant, because I quit, we had a huge fight. I had keys to the restaurant. I went in and I got my stuff. The owner said I stole a bunch of stuff, then wouldn't sign the paperwork after I was in custody. I was released without charges, and I sued the owner of the restaurant for a crime called abuse of process, which is like, if I'm truly not afraid of you, and I'm like, I think Justin's going to kill me, so they get a restraining order, and they take your guns, and then later, so that's called abuse of process. It's beating somebody with the club of the law. And I won $10,000. Wow.
But I don't like sit around and talk about like, oh, I got fucked over. Well, right? Like, I don't, like, everybody's been fucked over. Like, I was actually pretty nice. I got in a fight with the restaurant owner. I told them to go fuck themselves. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not, but it literally, like, I will tell you, the fight began over pork. That's how dumb this was. They were paying up for this, like, from De Braga. They were buying this, like, really expensive pork. And we had a line cook from Mexico who had a disabled son. And I showed the math where if we switched to a much lower grade pork, we could actually afford to buy him insurance. And the owner's like, no, I like the pork we buy. And I was like, wait. I like serving nice pork too. But I like getting insurance for an autistic kid more. And that was the beginning. It was about a month later, we got like a huge blow up. And I was just like, fuck you and your fucking pork. And like, gotten a huge blow up. And so I like left, and then I had keys, and I went and got my own stuff. And she called the police, said I took a bunch of stuff that wasn't mine. and then would not sign when the district attorney was like, we have him in custody, press charges, felony burglary. She's like, oh, felony. But I thought it was a... So then I was released without charges. Yeah, but like my point is like that shit's going to happen.
Yep.
Right? Like you're gonna get fucked over. But like that shouldn't be your opener. Right? Like you should like and also like I've been laid off and I've been fired. And I've been laid off. I never told people I was laid off. I was always embarrassed when I was laid off because it was like, no, COVID, everything's different. But I always felt like they're never like, well, Justin's killing it. And John kind of sucks, and we got to lay somebody out. Laugh, Justin. You know what I mean? Like, it's always like, it's like solving for something coming, And so, but like, as I, like, talk with younger and younger cooks, there seems to be this, like, badge of honor in having been, like, victimized or been fucked over. And I'm just like, no, like, that's not good. Like, you want to be the person who's like, no, I'll be fine. Like, give me a chance. Like, whatever. Like, I get it if you're, like, telling a sob story because you're trying to, like, if you're an edge case, it's like, well, we'll give him a shot. He's had a hard tale. But, like, I've met a couple, like maybe, like, 4 or 5, like, really young cooks who, like, really want me to think that they had this, like, uphill through the snow both ways, couldn't catch a break tale. And like, maybe they have. But, like, that's not attractive to me. I'm not like, oh, I want to hang out with this person more. I certainly don't want to work with them. I don't want to listen to that shit all day. Like, I had trials and tribulations of my own, man. 38 years old and divorced. Like, shit happens.
That's
like, shit happens.
1,000%. That's the reverse of the question that I had for you, which I'm calling it's like a meta question. So, you've run kitchens before. You've had these young, ambitious chefs apply and interview to work with you. And as I shared with you, like, that's a lot of the audience that's listening to the show. When you ask them interview questions, if you're not looking for, I played the victim, XYZ types of things, and feel free to use examples that come to mind, what do you look for in the answers that these people are giving? Or maybe some example questions too.
Yeah, I mean, I was the chef de cuisine for the restaurant group that I had, L'Artusi, Dell'Anima, L'Apicio, and Amphora, which was great to get fired from Dell'Anima and come back. So I ran their entire commissary kitchen, did all their prep. We had a big 5,000 square foot kitchen in Long Island City. And at the time, I think I had 70 cooks in the commissary, so it was a big operation.
Wow.
My wife at the time was allergic to the allium family, onion, garlic, shallot, chives, leeks. So we were at Five Guys one night getting a burger, which was like, we would sometimes like we would go to Five Guys like to celebrate, like when we bought our apartment and stuff like that, for whatever reason. It's like a goofy thing. And I forget exactly what happened, but there was like an issue with her burger. And I went up to the woman at the counter and she was just like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we'll make you another one. And there's this like young cook behind the counter who like kind of came out and around it and kind of realized like the translator was useless. And he's like, hey, sorry, what happened? And we're like, oh, like, and he's like, oh, okay, onions, got it. I'm going to clean the whole thing. He like brought it out and he like set it down in front of my wife. And I said, do you want a real fucking job in a real fucking kitchen? And he's like, yes. And I hired that kid out of Five Guys for that.
For anybody who hasn't been to Five Guys, that doesn't happen at Five Guys.
Yeah, I was so impressed. I was like, that was great, right? And I hired that kid. His name was Mark. He did all right. He did well. We ended up sending him from the commissary to one of the restaurants, and I don't know how long he left there, but I think working at a restaurant in Manhattan, I think he had issues taking the shit you gotta take, right? I think because I remember he wanted to come back to the commissary, and I told him no, like you don't get to move back home, man.
Right.
Like figure it out. Like I was hoping he's gonna be like, you know what, and God, it would be interesting to find out where he's at now. But I remember like I created kind of like a womb-like environment for him. because I really wanted him to be successful. And then I think we sent him to Lapisha. And the chef at Lapisha she was tough. Like, her and I, like, woo. Like, we weren't hanging out. Like,
right.
we were like, well, you know. And I think maybe because he was, like, kind of my guy, he got drummed out of there.
I see.
But, like, how impressive would it have been if I was like, now he's the chef of, it slipped from his little fingers. But, you know, the biggest thing I always looked for was, like, enthusiasm. That's what I cared about. Like, I trained probably a dozen African dishwashers from Senegal to go from dishwashers to prep cooks, and one, Chia, ended up working the line at, I think, Clare, and then later went on to other restaurants. But, like, that was just because those guys are just standing around washing pots. Like, what are you doing over there? Like, I'll show you to butcher chickens. Like, you want to learn to butcher chickens? You want to make ravioli fillings? You want to work with pasta crust? And so we actually ended up building kind of a culinary school in there where they would, like, make stocks, and then like, eventually these cooks would be at the restaurant. They'd be like, oh, I have familiarity with that. I used to make that pasta. I used to sheet that out. I made the stock for that. And they actually made really good line cooks. And that was something I was really proud of. But it was all about enthusiasm for me. If somebody was really enthusiastic, you could work with that. I never really, not to say there's not space for people that just want a paycheck, but, like, one of the things, you know, I think as long as there's been restaurants, there's been push-pull between front of house and back of house. But a good restaurant, the type of restaurant I always wanted to work at, you could go to anybody in the back of the house and say, like, what do you do? And they'd say, chef. And the issue that we had at, like, maybe the sub-Michelin or the Michelin recommended or the one Michelin-star restaurant that gets cleared up at the 2 and 3 star joints is if you were to ask some of the front of house, what do? Most of them don't say I'm a server or a bartender. They say I'm an actor, I'm a musician. You know, and it's like, well, act like you give a fuck about this job, you know? But that's, you know, but that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about, like, enthusiasm. We're talking about care. We're talking about professionalism. And I think when you meet somebody and they are aspiring to do something that's further down the road than they are, like, that's kind of where, like, lightning strikes. And, like, you know, I'm really proud. I've made a few really good chefs in my day, and I'm really proud of that. I love those guys, you know, and you know, if it wasn't for COVID, they'd be doing a lot more than they're doing now. But enthusiasm, just be super enthusiastic, and, like, even now, you know, I'm relentless with, like, dad jokes, you know, like, I'm so relentless. I'm so enthusiastic about everything. I train a lot. I work hard, and I'm really excited when I meet, like, a young cook or anybody who just is there to get after it, you know, and just really understands that, like, you're only going to have, like, you have, let's see, 250 work nights a year. You probably have 200 really bad nights in your career. You know what I mean? There's probably...
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You do the math. If you're in a restaurant for 20 years, you probably have 200 awful nights. You know, like...
Yep.
Probably, like, 15 a year.
Sure.
That are just like, fuck do I do this for? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, everybody's flipping on banana peels. The fuck? You know, like, just... And, like, the people that are like, I just want to get those out. Like, let's just get after it. Let's see, it's tonight or night, you know? Like, where just the kitchen goes down, and if you can just understand that, just like you want to experience it all, like the good, the bad, and just to not, you know, when I was at Public one day, we were making stock, and it boiled over, and the whole pot caught on fire, right? Like the whole, like, raging, and the sous chef, his name was Sun, is this Chinese kid from Baltimore. It was very, like, he looked really Chinese, and he had, like, a Baltimore accent. But he was awesome. He was dope. I loved him. And he's like, come on, bro. Come on. We got to get this down so the Ansel system doesn't go off. And we, like, pulled it off and set it on the floor. And, I mean, this thing was, like, a blowtorch. And then, like, and then he was, like, all amped. You know, he's like, oh, and then he was just like, man. And then, like, he came up to me later, and he was like, God, that was a pretty bad kitchen fire, huh? I was like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, I was like, I got to keep my cool so this kid doesn't see me freak out. And I remember thinking, like, ooh, all right, cool, good. Like,
yeah.
I'm glad he broke the third wall for that, or fourth wall.
Sure.
But it's like just be enthusiastic, have fun, and just be there for everything. And don't cut people slack. Like, you make mistakes, they're gonna make mistakes, and your job is to make a really delicious tuna tartare, and at one point 6 are gonna go out for an event, and the sous chef's gonna take a bite, and he's gonna be like, there's not a fucking grain of salt anywhere near that, and you're gonna be like, his job is to manage, and there's gonna be times he's gonna fuck up, just like you didn't put capers in that, and he's gonna treat you a little unfairly. If you don't want to be fired the first time you forget to fucking use a brioche bun instead of an oatmeal bun, you can't freak out and go to HR and try and get this dude fired the first time he calls you a fucking moron. There needs to be an understanding that, as an almost 40-year-old man, I look back at sous chefs and I see children, because I'm old. And, I remember looking up at sous chefs and seeing, wise men,
Right.
But that's just the progress, right? This guy managing you, who, you look at as, this terror who's ruining your life, as a child. Now, there is still one sous chef who tortured me, who I still do actually literally want to fight. And I've tried to set traps. I invested in a restaurant in San Francisco, and I tell Chris Blydorn, who I was his commis at Alinea, I'm like, I will come and do a tasting menu, but I also want you to invite this unnamed person, and we will do the tasting menu. And after the last service, I'm going to fight him. So far, we are yet to, but I will do it. I will stream it live on Facebook. Guy Fieri can monetize it, and we'll give all the money to the food service industry. It will be for a good cause. But having said that, cutting people who are abusive to you some slack. Now, obviously I'm joking and I'm trying to add levity to it, Sure. But, that kind of sounds preposterous for me to say I want to beat somebody up who was mean to me 13 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah, but I still kind of do. But I know that, my life would be better if I was like, he was a child.
Yeah.
It's a coked-up child who had his own insecurities. But that's my advice to people, is, be enthusiastic. Work really hard, and understand that, you're going to fuck things up, and so are your managers. And everything can't be the end of the world. And, the more unshakable and steady you can be, the more impressive that is to management. Because they're like, I can give this guy responsibility, right? This guy's not a fucking crybaby. He's not somebody that I need to really be. He's not, the first time, a chef or a sous chef, makes, kind of an inappropriate joke in your station, you kind of feel oh, cool, this guy trusts me, right? It's oh, nice, we're becoming friends, And it's I also think that, people, certainly when I was working a hot station, it was hard, and the stakes were high. And if somebody fucked up, it set the entire kitchen back. People had to refire stuff. So, a lot of that is going to be frustrating. A lot of it is going to be, I want my eggs over medium. Oh, fucking medium. Fucking pain in the ass on table 62. There's going to be shit that's just going to suck. Can you do an egg white omelet? Well, it's not on the menu. Well, you should do it. Yeah. It's so there's going to be these frustrations. And a lot of the hazing, a lot of the bullying, is because you don't want to let somebody mentally weak into that brigade who's going to fold like laundry when the pressure's on, right? You can't have somebody just be like, this is too hard. Why are, what? I need to go talk to the manager. Why'd they sit all these tables at once? It's whoa, dude, fucking hold on. Take half your tickets and slide them over here. Do these. You need to be able to fucking focus. It's not about the manager. What do you mean? That is not your concern. You are bottom of the food chain. That's not my concern. I'm a worker bee, baby. I'm a fucking worker bee. But you need to make sure that people can handle a certain amount of stress, discomfort, frustration. Because we've all seen people melt down on the line.
Totally.
All of a sudden it's Karen with a clipboard who's going to get the manager and pull the manager who's been managing restaurants for 30 years and tell them they can't sit the restaurant all at once. And she's going to be like, I didn't sit them all at once. talk to your when your printer was up, or whatever. It's like this whole emotional thing, and like part of like that's kind of was it good or bad? I don't know. I know that it toughened me up. It didn't kill me.
It's this element of the Nassim Taleb anti-fragility concept, right? Where it's like people that crumble, and then the people that beat those people, the crumblers, out are the people who can overcome that adversity. And then there's the anti-fragile people who, when you throw problems at them, they actually become stronger. Don't fuck with that person, because they're gonna like, you don't have a chance. You don't stand a chance against the anti-fragile person. So it's like, how do you cultivate that in the context of working in a restaurant? Because if you can, I think you and I are both agreeing that it's just like, then your options are, you don't have to be scared about going from 2-star to 3-star or doing that first pop-up or whatever, because it's all these little elements kind of like tying in.
Yeah, and like, it's also, there's nothing wrong with failing. There's nothing wrong with, like, I mean, if you sign up at a jiu-jitsu gym, like, you're not going to experience any success for 3 months. You can get smashed. Like, I had a wrestling background, so it was, like, a little less foreign to me. But, like, I still get smashed. I train with Marcelo Garcia. I've trained with Marcelo Garcia hundreds of times, which means I've been smashed hundreds of times. Like, that guy, as much sparring as I've done, it's hopeless with him. It's just a matter of time. Like, it just might take him a little bit longer to strangle me. Like, it's hopeless. It's inevitable. It's doomed. And it's like, you can't expect that, like Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, you have to just get after it and take the lessons that are in front of you and, like, not worry about it. Like, nobody ever really regrets, like, competing. Nobody ever really regrets doing a pop-up. Like, I mean, now, like, you could have some shitty article written and not be able to get, like, but, like, outside
but that's always the first scene of the documentary on that chef. You watch anything about Wiley Dufresne, like, they start the documentary with his negative articles that someone in New York wrote about his concept that he tried, and it's just like, it's that much sweeter at the end, like,
like my nephew now knows what, like, cauliflower, he's seen some UFC fights, he's like, oh, like, your ears, and so he wanted to learn to wrestle because he finds, like, that to be something of value that, I think he thinks if his ears look like that, people won't pick fights with him, which I was like, dude, people still pick fights with me. Like, it's like, I people for sure are going to pick fights with you. So I took him to a wrestling class, and he came up to me, he's like, Uncle Stevie, I don't like wrestling. I was like, nobody likes it. It's fucking terrible. That's why we do it. Right? Like, no, like, that's nobody likes working in the kitchen. That's why we do it. We do it because we find peace and serenity in the chaos and the violence, right? Like, that's, like, there's something amazing. And then, like, like, when I was there's a chef named Chris Lee. He's a very good friend of mine. He's like a little brother to me. And he and I lived together after culinary school. And it was after I was a sous chef at La Esquina, and it was right as I was, like, taking over a restaurant in Brooklyn. And I would have girls over that I met online or that I met in the restaurant, and I would cook them dinner. And I remember one time he was like, that's a real skill to be able to, like, have a girl come over, whip up a dinner, and then, like, hopefully,
Sure.
But I cooked dinner for so many girls that, like, just doing a dinner for somebody became like no big deal. And I think, like, that any way you can get those, like in a gym, we call it, like, mat hours, like sparring, right? Any of those, because, like, there's a difference between, like, there's nothing wrong with picking herbs. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you do what somebody will let you do. Do you want to do a lot at a good restaurant or very little at a great restaurant? Like, I mean, one night, like, I think the more you can, like, more extracurricular stuff where you can, like, cook someone dinner is great. And, like, now, like, cooking dinner for somebody is really, there's not one part of me that's concerned about like, am I going to be able to put out a dinner? You know, and I think it's very fun. There comes a point where, you know, first comes accuracy and then speed, right? So like first you want to know how to do things right, and then you get fast to them. And I remember at Alinea, Grant leaning in, being like, if you ever want to work here, you need to learn to work really fucking fast. And I was like, yeah, chef. And he goes, no. Like orders of magnitude beyond where you are now. And I was like, oh, whoa, I already thought I was fast. He's like, you're not. You know, one night he came up to me and said, do you know how to cut hair, chef? I said, no, chef. And he said, you should learn. You should do anything but make people's food. You're truly awful at this. I was like, oh. I believe I cried in the downstairs bathroom and washed my face. And I came up, and I think it was Chris Blydorn. He was like, didn't know if I was going to see you back here. It's like, that was rough. You know, but like, that was like, I was a child pursuing my dream. And he was like, you should learn to cut hair. You're truly awful at this. Don't, you should never make people do it. You know, but like, I think like the more reps you can get in on something, the better. Like, cook people dinner. Like, cook your family dinner. Like, try, like, do as much of that shit as you can. And then you'll start to see, like, oh, fuck, like, I want to sous vide the ribeye ahead of time and just be picking it up. Like, I want my purees done. Like, I don't want to be pureeing shit between courses. Like, you'll start to learn this order of operations, and then and that's mirrored in your mise en place, right? You're not making purees during service. Or, I mean, if you are, things have gone horribly wrong, and Grant's going to tell you should look for a new job. That was like literally what was happening. I think I made if memory serves, I made the black truffle explosions wrong, and they all popped in the water.
Oh my God.
And he was furious. We were sheeting out pasta during service.
There's an important nugget in that, though, from the sense of, I think that there's this, you see it when people think that there's this element of being able to cook from a cookbook through enough dishes, or do the same thing, you know, the stereotypical, like, make hollandaise, poach eggs, cook protein, cook a piece of fish, whatever, enough times at home, where that then should count towards their mat hours. But I think what you're saying, and what I would certainly agree with, is that there's this element of, like, there needs to be stakes involved. Like, there needs to be negative consequences from failure. Like, there needs to be feedback. Like, there's something there that's missing from this idea that you can take two nonstick pans, put them on your stove, and just, like, become a good brunch cook after a week.
Yeah, you know? I think you make a good point, right? Like what makes a good cook? Like, I don't think there's a recipe. Like, no pun intended. Like, I think that it can come from, like, humans are capable of, like, incredible things, and I think it can come from anywhere, but you have to want it. And I think that, like, having friends over, and, like, but, like, it can't be the thing where they're just watching the Super Bowl when the food's up, it's up. That's not real life. So, like, when a girl's sitting across from you and you're trying to impress her, like, she can tell if you're in the shits or not, and that's good. You know? And, like, it's somewhat low consequence. Like,
right. In the grand scheme of things,
absolutely. That depends on your goals for the evening. Yeah. But,
totally.
You know, like, but I think exactly what you're saying, right? It's like, it gives you an opportunity to do an audit afterward. Say, like, well, what went wrong? Yeah. Oh, like, you know, and then you start to understand that, like, oh, okay, so, like, what do I really want on a dish? Well, I want, like, a starch, 2-3 veggies, a sauce or a puree, a protein, and some garnish. Okay, cool. So what do I have? And then eventually you'll get so comfortable. You're like, oh, you grew up in Cincinnati? That's crazy. Oh, okay, I got a pumpkin right here. You know, it's like you'll start to just get, and then the confidence that comes with it, where it's just like, why would you put pumpkin pie filling with Arctic char? And you're like, oh, like, you know, in Iceland, they do a lot of, you know, pumpkin pies. You know, you'll start to realize, like, oh, I made a mistake, but, like, maybe I can pull it off. And with enough credibility and confidence, they'll be like, wow, this is good, you know, and then you start to play a little, but you can't skip steps. You can't, like, be playing while, like, a pan is scorching behind you, because people are going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you put pumpkin pie?
This is not right.
Arctic char. You know, why would you put beets and caramel together? That's gross.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, we've all like most of us. I mean, I shouldn't say we all, or most of us. You know, like there are concepts that work very well together, right? Like why, like salt and acid, fat. You know, acidity cutting through the richness. But then there's like times you want to break that rule, right? If you have like a really awesome, you know, we almost always want to pair like acidity with fat, right? Like pretty standard. If you're going to make me a burrata salad, I'm probably going to expect a really acidic dressing on the greens with it or whatever, right? But like you're going to do that so many times and it's going to become formulaic. And I bet, Justin, if I came over to your house for dinner and someone from up the road was like, my grandma made this burrata, you might put no vinegar with it. You might be like, I want it to be over the top, creamy, rich. There's no like right and wrong way to do it. And that's what's incredible. But like, until you know the rules, you can't break them. And a lot of people want to be in that rule breaking phase because that's cool. It's cool to see like Wiley Dufresne break a piece of clay on the table and there's a steak in it. You know, you're like, what? You know, like that's awesome. Who doesn't want that? But until you like know how to cook a steak, you certainly can't cook it in a piece of clay over 4 hours, you know? And it's until like, you know, until I was working in a restaurant and they had a salad that was literally disgusting. And I went to like the chef and I was like, the fuck is this? This is inedible. Like, this is inedible. Like, if you watch your dish pit, you will see it's piled up with this terrible carrot salad. And she was like somewhat in defense of it. And I was like, let me taste the vinaigrette. And she's like starting to get like indignant and upset. Taste the vinaigrette. I was like, this is like pure vinegar. Like, you need to do 3 to 1. They're like, well, we do 3 parts vinegar, 1 part acid. I was like, nobody does that. Or 3 parts acid, 1 part fat. I'm like, nobody does that. Like, you don't have to reinvent the fucking vinaigrette. Like, this is settled science. And then, like, when I traced it back with the executive chef of the whole restaurant group, because it was, like, a thing. Like, we'd have a meeting about it. And he was like, well, we use this. That same dressing came from another restaurant with an avocado salad. And I was like, say that again. And he's like, we used to put that on an avocado salad. I was like, say that again. And what are you putting it on now? And he's like, And everybody realized they fucked up. And I was like, but, like, what emperor new clothes world are we living in where people are like taking a bite of salad like it's coming back unmolested and people are like the diner's wrong. Like, so that's like an example of like this chick running the restaurant, like she hadn't put in her, like she got promoted because she was nice and she was a good teacher, but like she had not gotten the shit. Like it was so bananas to her that I was like, this salad is disgusting. She was like, you're in my home. And I was like, kind of. Yeah, but let me get the fuck out of my way. Where's the dressing? Like, oh, perfect. Wonderful. I know what went wrong. Where's the commis so I can explain to him? So we can pull his moleskin out and I can scratch out the 3 and the 1 and write the 3 and the 1 in the right places. And like, no. We make it 3 parts vinegar to 1 part acid. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know, but it was because they just moved that recipe from their sister restaurant where it was an avocado salad, which obviously an avocado is providing that excess fat. And it's like, the sweetness of the avocado, that's nice. You know, but like that was an example of somebody breaking rules they ought not break. And that was an example of somebody being promoted too quickly. And that was something that my own personal flaw was I was never able to get over that this person's perceived disrespect, their response to me, then me having the moral high ground and being right, and then me kind of twisting the knife on them as a sign of my immaturity when I was 31 years old, and I had a big role in a big restaurant group, and like kind of poisoning my own water. You know, I was just like, that person doesn't know what they're doing, and I want to see him fired. Sure. Which is like a terrible position for me to be in, and it backfired. Like I was the one that ended up leaving the restaurant group, and that was a point in my life where I was like very angry in general. I was like kind of like an angry cook, and like I wish I could go back and just approach so much more of that with love, compassion, and patience. And like for a long time, I think in my head, if I drew a picture of a chef, that was great. He was scary. He was barking. And like these days, like I think it just, I mean, I hope it comes with age and maturity and confidence. And like, I don't think I need to I don't need to intimidate anyone, you know, like and I don't even like, for what? Like, so that they'll do what I say. Like, I mean, if you have a better idea, let's hear it. Let's do it. Like, fuck, awesome. Like you come from another part of the world and you do it different. All right, let's see it. Like, let's see it, you know? And I think a lot of people are very worried that like somebody's going to impress management and take their job. And like, that doesn't really happen. Like if you got fired, like if you got fired, it's because they wanted to fire you. It's not because Justin's better than you, you know, like there's room for like a really awesome kick-ass line cook along with a great sous chef who maybe mechanically isn't where that line cook is. But I don't really give a fuck how mechanically good a line cook is. Like, great. I mean, I do. Like, that's wonderful. But I'm not going to get rid of an excellent manager who always makes sure to tell somebody to clean the walk-in. Someone who makes sure that they have delegated properly and that the inventory is done. Someone who is diligent and spot checks the inventory to make sure people aren't just lazily writing 145 pounds of coffee. You know, somebody who like to look at a good mechanic on the line and think like, oh, that person might take my job is crazy. But in the moment, we all fear it. Everybody has a human fear of being replaced.
Sure.
The more you can get away from that fear, like the better your career and life will be. The more you can like understand that like people get fired not because they're not good at their job, but because their attitude sucks or they're combative or they create problems, which is like a pitfall that I have had. You know, I've been very combative. I've been very happy to engage in conflict, very willing to show people I was right and they were wrong. And like having been on the other side of that, like nobody fucking cares. Like I don't care who was right in an argument from 4 days ago. I look at both of those parties like, you're such children. I don't fucking care. I literally can't tell you how little management cares over who was right and who was wrong. If two people get in an argument and 40 minutes later I see them fist bump and go back to work, I'm like, oh, fuck, awesome. Like I'm not a fucking schoolyard referee. Nobody cares. But we get so caught up in like, I was right. That ticket, it said that. Like, oh, you know, and like she wrote in no beats, but you know, it's like you're gonna give yourself, like, you're just aging yourself, and it just, people like let go of like who was right, who was wrong, and even if you're wrong, but like, I mean, I wouldn't like, oh, I was wrong when I wasn't, but the more you can just like let go of shit and just do your job, and just when you're, we all kind of want to, or certainly I did want to like steal time with like senior people and like, oh, hey chef, like, hey, just the way you liked it, like more like the way to connect with like senior people is like just ask them real questions, like, hey chef, in culinary school they taught us to do it this way, we do it this way, like what makes you want to break that rule? It's like, oh, like here's why, like this is an avocado salad, so we use more vinegar, and like if you take a bite of it, like you'll see, like, hey chef, like I noticed that it's like really specific in the menu to finish the vinaigrette with salt. Why is that? Oh, because when it's a fat-rich environment, the salt won't dissolve. So we put the Malden in, and you'll get that crunch when you eat it. Oh, but like that's the shit the chef wants to talk about. He doesn't want to fucking see your new way of
or hear that you did it 10 minutes faster than the other. You know what I mean?
Definitely doesn't care, because if it's not fucking perfect, he's gonna freak out on you. So you're like, why the fuck did you care about the time? Like that would be like, it would be worth a kid distracting me and bragging just so I could rip him apart later, like, and like you're almost setting yourself up. I remember I was joking around and having a grand old time, and Brad Farmier from Public and Double Crown and Saxon Pearl called me over and said, "Steve, if you're not set up by 5:01, I'm gonna fucking freak out on you." I'm just very like, okay, like if you're not like, I'm gonna fucking freak out. like, so but yeah, I think a lot of this stuff comes with perspective. And, my grandfather my grandfather's favorite saying was, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. A lot of it is you're going to make silly mistakes. And there's going to be times when you think you're impressing somebody and you're going to be fun. And it's when that room starts spinning and you realize you're the butt of the joke, it's good, right?
Totally.
Just don't.
That's one of your
out,
200 nights, right? That's one of your 200 days,
Scratch it off on your wall of jail, your hash mark.
Exactly.
I
want to. I mean, it's all. I could listen to your stories for literally 3 more hours. I want to switch gears really quickly and then wrap it up with rapid fire questions. Is that cool?
Sure.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts because I've seen, I don't know if you've noticed it in the New York scene, of chefs prioritizing nutrition for themselves, even to the extent of restaurants working with nutritionists to design staff meals for the team. What is your take on that? And do you have any specific takeaways that a sous chef who's listening could potentially bring into their team to adjust what they eat as part of their day from what you've learned in nutrition?
Yeah, so I guess so I worked with a company that did a big Hamptons nutrition thing a few times, and I think there's 2 aspects, right? There's the execution of the reception. Okay. So if somebody's, and I've worked with alcoholics and drug addicts through Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time. You're not going to make somebody get sober who doesn't want to get sober, and you're not going to make somebody get healthy who doesn't want to get healthy. So totally. You kind of need both of those working in tandem. I think that I think that's fantastic if people are working with nutritionists and things. But the best way I can describe it is I can kind of sum it up pretty quickly and give you more of a holistic way of looking at things than a lot of people have looked at it. So weight gain is really I don't really focus on vitamins, minerals, things like that. But most of us cooks, our diets are we get that. We're eating broccoli raw, we're eating Arctic char, we're trying caviar, we're eating foie gras. We're kind of, we have a rounded, I hope if you're a chef, you're not eating the same 6 things every day.
But there's also this element of you might eat 1 meal a day, so potentially optimize for that, that, just interesting, kitchen things.
Well, so one of the big deals is in solving, what I solve for mostly is weight, scale, weight, and body fat percentage.
Okay.
So one of the big enemies of weight loss is insulin. Bodybuilders will actually inject themselves with exogenous insulin because it just makes your body hoard everything and grow. And we all know that you shouldn't eat a big meal before bed. Why? Right? Why? So it all boils down to blood sugar. So let's say you have an ambient blood sugar of 65. If your blood sugar hits 120, your body will release insulin to prevent you from going into diabetic shock, right? And that's the issue with diabetics, right? They can't manage it, so they have to add insulin. So there's a few ways your body will release insulin, and there's a few ways we look at glycemic index and how it translates to blood sugar. So you have simple carbs, complex carbs, refined carbs. First and foremost, blood sugar is gasoline. It is the fuel your body wants to run on. Body fat is coal. It doesn't really want to run on it. It's hard for it, right? And a really good way to use it, a lot of people like doing ketosis. A lot of people like ketogenic diets. A lot of people like gluten-free diets. A lot of people like intermittent fasting. To be honest, having worked with, I've worked with so many fucking people. Often those things work because now that person is doing something, whereas previously they've done nothing.
Interesting.
Right? I do ketogenic. I was 50 pounds overweight. I did the ketogenic diet. I lost 30 pounds. Well, you might have lost 30 pounds doing intermittent fasting. You might have lost 30 pounds counting calories. Now you implemented a form of discipline, right? And that's not to knock anything. People should fucking try everything. But people often will experience success with one thing and treat it like a religion, right?
Right. Because you'll also never know the alternative unless you're willing to put that weight back on and then do the,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
like, who the fuck would do that? I wouldn't do that. That's crazy. Like, y'all can figure it out for yourselves. The ketogenic diet works for me, But,
yeah.
So really, like, what happens is there's two responses. One is you get your blood sugar about 80 or 90 or 100, right? Like, just under the threshold. And then let's say you drink a Coke or something like that. Your body knows that its blood sugar is about to rise, so it'll release insulin to store that. Sugars from dairy seem to be much more dramatic. So it's kind of like a power curve. Like 0 to 10 grams of sugar may influence your insulin response this much, right? Well, 20 to 30, it's not double, it's 2.25. Yeah. 30 to 40 isn't, so it gets exponentially more dramatic. And sugar from dairy seems to influence it faster. As far as simple carbs, naturally occurring liquid sugars, things like honey and maple syrup, things like that seem to be better than like simple syrup, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. More refined, direct. And obviously, like, sugars naturally occurring in fruit are even better than that, depending. And then obviously the best are complex carbohydrates, zucchini, cauliflower, things like that, right? Nobody's shocked. So it's not bad to eat sugar or have something rich or if you're going to burn it off. And it's also not bad to eat at night if you're not spiking your blood sugar, right? Because when you enter REM sleep, your body will release insulin just the same as if you had a second meal to stabilize everything so you can get good rest. So, having a grilled skirt steak and arugula at midnight might be fine. It's not this, I'm not telling you eat spaghetti bolognese at 2 a.m. and expect to lose weight.
Right.
But as far as nutrition, I usually think of it as trying to minimize to a reasonable extent unnecessary carbs. I eat pasta, I shit like that. And then generally I look at overall calories and then I look at quality of calories. I'm a big believer in like really nice, if you can afford it, like venison as opposed to beef, guinea hen as opposed to chicken, maybe there's a company in Brooklyn called La Pera, and that's where like Danielle buys his birds and he gets them from local, and like he'll call you, like you'll be like, hey, can I get 12 sassoon? He'll be like, hold on, you'll hear him like, and he kills them to order, and you gotta wait 3 days, let them go through rigor mortis. But they're great birds, they're great birds. Sure. But this is kind of like a privilege to be able to eat this, so, but I think, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, a big wedge of lemon, salt, and pepper, and sous vide at 140 degrees for 12 hours till it pulls, and a can of tomatoes, and make chicken tinga and put that over like a nice, lovingly made jasmine rice is a perfectly acceptable family meal, but like, throw 2 bags of carrots in with it, so that you're eating carrots braised in red sauce with onions and, more vegetables. But, as far as optimizing for like family meal, that's like a whole expertise that I don't have. Sure. I'm very fortunate in that I'm dealing with people with means who are, and a lot of, like, when you talk about like what struck my ear as far as family meal goes, you would hope that those people would be having diverse enough diets, but like coming into some of these people who have money and have tried everything to lose weight, these women who are like, just, they've had 3 kids, they're 48 years old, and like, they're like, and they're as disciplined as the fucking fighters that I work for. I wouldn't dare put these bitches in a sauna. They'll ride that Aerodyne until they die. Whereas my fighter's like, I need air. She's like, Susie has a party next week. Like that bitch. Just like, think how much you hate that bitch. She's like, I hate that bitch. Like those women are tough. Those women are tough. And so like some of them, I've actually started having them get blood work done because they would eat like cauliflower rice, chicken breast every day, and they end up serious nutritional deficiencies because they're so disciplined.
Right.
They're just like boom, 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 boom. And so when I start working with somebody who's like, you can tell is not eating cupcakes in the middle of the night and they're not losing weight, getting that full panel hormonal and blood work done is very valuable. They pay for it. you know. And so I just make the recommendation. But like they can, if you're one of those women or men, even, I mean anybody, right? But if you're just like very disciplined and it's not working, it might not be working for like a bevy of reasons. And one could be like really like monoculture diets, right? Like you're eating, you know, cauliflower as rice with a little bit of tomato, and like your morning every day is overnight oats made with, you know, if you're going through that, like you can end up with serious deficiencies. Whereas like you would hope like a young cook who's like, oh, like let's go out to Bed-Stuy and do a tasting menu at this pop-up. Like you should be getting enough vitamin K, enough, you know, you would hope.
Sure.
As far as family meal, that's always like, you know, I remember, it's kind of funny actually. I remember eating my family meal out of a pint container at like midnight and having a chef. He was like, "Can I see that?" And he threw it away. He's like, "That's gross." And I was like, so like, whoa, like, no, I mean, it was funny, right?
Yeah.
That's gross. And he goes, "That's time
there.
temperature abuse."
Yep.
He's like, "That's time temperature abuse." You know, that's gross. Right? But it's like that was like, you know, like. But so like eating out of a deli that one meal, like I can empathize with that. But yeah, I think a lot, you know, the question comes to like ethics and morality, right? Like ethics is kind of wide across a group of people, and morality is deeply personal. You have to decide, is like serving food with no caloric budget whatsoever, is that moral? Is that ethical? Is it better if adding an extra 2 scoops of butter, if somebody's going to sit down, they're going to have 4 courses. If those 4 courses are 6,000 calories, but they taste better than if the 4 courses are 3,200 calories, are you okay doing that?
Mm.
Oh, it's a personal question. Like I'm not, you know, but you know, the brown butter, sage, you know, give us some 65, 35 ground beef for the bolognese. Like, is that, I don't know, right? Like that's a real question to ask yourself. And also like who are you? Are you a fucking martyr? Are you gonna let your business go out of, like, do you know better what the client wants than you? Like, I'd be furious. But like, I hate when I'm like, hey, I'll get a Diet Coke. Like, we don't serve soda or Diet beverages. I'm like, don't fucking judge me.
Yeah.
Like, I'll walk out of this restaurant. So like, they're like, you know, there's that balance. Like, is it your place to tell a fat guy he can't order the ossobuco?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, what are you, his mom? I don't know. So that I kind of know, I can only speak to my own like business model, which is like as organic as possible. I don't use any dairy at all. You know, I do a lot of like finishing with like Japanese sake for the acidity, and I cook vegetables like very lovingly one by one. I do a lot of game meat, no dairy, very little gluten if possible. And it's just because I love that, and I like doing big long tasting menus for people, and I like that somebody can eat a 9-course tasting menu and then feel like they can go for a jog. You know, they're not like their body isn't pumping out insulin. They're not like, oh, I just need to go to bed and digest this. You know, they feel like, oh wow, like I actually feel light and fresh, and you know, but that's a choice I make. You know, I get pissed when I feel like people judge me because I want to drink Diet Coke. You know, so as I'm saying, like, you know, that's something for people to figure out. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I would be shocked if somebody was like, oh, I've been eating at nothing but Michelin recommended restaurants and the weight's just falling off. You know, like that's like, even that, it sounds preposterous, right?
Totally.
Because the food we're producing is like not healthy food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's healthy if you're on a fucking island. It's
Right.
healthy if you need to get all your calories in one meal for the day.
Yeah.
You know, but that's something, and it depends on how we're defining healthy. You know, for me, I look at it in a very narrow scope of, you know, fucking Damian Maya is fighting somebody, and he needs to weigh 170 pounds for 3 minutes, and if he doesn't, 20% of his money goes to his opponent. Like, okay, well, that is our goal. That's a very tightly focused goal, you know, and
you have the resources to make it happen, like, right? Like, you're not constrained in this realm of, you know, you have to use trim plus whatever's in the walk-in kind of.
Yeah, that's a whole nother animal when it comes to family.
Totally different.
That's so fun. Like that is.
It is.
Like when you make a good family meal, like that's like that moment when you're on a date with a girl and you realize she's gonna have sex with you. You're just like,
it's
like that moment when you're just like when you're on a date, and you know it's going well, and like you lean in for the kiss, they kiss you back. Like making an exceptional family meal might be one of the best feelings.
I got roasted at my last job because I got so into. I would mentor the two apprentices in the morning, and I would do all the butchery tasks in the AM. But I would also take on staff meal at the same time, and it got to a point where I was like, I would get roasted because he's like, I'm paying you way too much to make staff meal. But It was literally my favorite thing in the world, because my two favorite things I was so into was like playing around with staff meal style food and butchering, and so I got to do both at my job. So it was like chapter in my career where I was like, dream job. But so completely agree. A well executed staff meal that you're happy with, and that like the team is happy with, and everyone's just like, I don't know, saying thank you to you. That the one meal of the day was like truly delicious. It's special.
And I'm dating a girl now, and she has a 4.5-year-old, and the kid's just like, it's. I mean, you're talking to a guy who had a vasectomy at 30 who's like, I don't want to. So I still like it's very confusing to me, this entire situation. I'm just like, are you sure you guys like this? but like looking at it from a whole nother way that I never even anticipated. Like I made food for like clients' kids and stuff, but like the sense of responsibility in basically making all the food for a kid is like it's made me like, if you fuck up like a grown man's diet, there's kind of like a, wow, you should have Googled it too, but like when you, with like a 4.5-year-old, you're like, wait, hold on, let me see, like, is this round enough? Are they getting their, then it becomes like, it's fun too, because the kid like calls me her chef, she's like, oh, my chef, just like,
that's
awesome. And so like I have a little bit of credibility, like, stuff that she kind of normally would probably tell people now too. But cooking for a kid in that regard has been like really mind blowing. It's been really, really, and like I had nieces and nephews, but as weird as it sounds, it feels a little different. But yeah, it's I think I do kind of understand your question now that I've digested a little, in the sense of like that sense of responsibility in cooking for a captive audience and giving them their one meal a day. It's like, yeah, I mean that's scary,
just like,
right? So
not just that, but like, what is the in 2028 the highest performing kitchen in the world, and they run their team where the entire staff is in ketosis? Because like they need to be performing at that level.
Dude, that'd be a pretty fucking low energy kitchen, man. That'd be I mean, you'd have to do like.
But what
slow
sort of
food?
What sort of augmented? No.
Yeah.
But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the extreme. But like, what is the example of? This is a fully nutritionally optimized plan for the week.
I think you'd have to come up with a holistic approach, right? And I don't know if you could do that if you're just giving them one meal. So I think something like that, if you were to say, Steven, let's have a fun project, could you manage this? I would say they would have some sort of rotating menu where pieces would interlock, right? So you would do something like you do something fun, super easy, like a big batch overnight oats. And then you would do things. I mean, obviously, this is don't put a budget to this. We're gonna assume
this is how you get there. Yeah, this is how you get there. You know, like
So we do
accuracy,
like
sometimes
kind of we do that with. Yeah, so you do like hemp seed in it. You would use those overnight oats or whatever as a vehicle. You do caramelized bananas with them, coconut shreds. Add some diversity there. And then another day, and so that would pair up with like a meat-heavy lunch. Then you'd have like a vegetarian day where you do like egg white omelets in the morning, or maybe you do, 8 to 10. You do like 2 whole eggs to 8 egg whites to keep the cholesterol down. Make like frittata, something baked, something where you could have a comey, separate the two, and you're gonna be like, look, you're gonna drop this into a pan, pour the eggs over it, throw it in a 400-degree oven, right? And then that day, since you've got the good fats from that, maybe you do like a Japanese soup for lunch, or actually, I like the idea of you do something like roast potatoes, meat, and then for dinner, like you could make like a really nice, very easy like Japanese soup, like a miso soup, and let people close out the night with like a nice little pint of warm beverage, and like rotate them in and out where you're fitting the pieces together. But you would actually have to sit down and solve for that. You'd actually have to look at the macros and say like, and you could optimize it, right? Like there was a time in wrestling rooms where like nobody in my wrestling rooms didn't drink water. Then they realized if they let people drink water, they'll perform better. If we let them have high blood sugar, you'll have a better workout. If we open the windows and turn the fan on and play music, people will stay longer after class and they'll get more mat hours in. And in 2 years, they'll be better fighters than the gym across the street who run it like Marine Corps maniacs, right? Because the 42-year-old accountant is like, I don't want to train in a hot room with all the windows closed and everybody yelling at me. I'll just skip training today. Whereas the people who are smoking pot and have the windows open and the fan and the reggae blast. So like maybe before service, you're doing higher sugar, rice, barley, these complex carbs, high energy meals, and then maybe even a dessert. Like, I don't know, jack that blood sugar up, give you something to burn off right before the crush. Like if it was like, let's just do it in a simulation, like, you'd have pastry put their dessert out right before the crush, totally. Like little, the trimmings with the little frosting.
Yeah.
Pistachio ice cream from the Paco Jet that was left over.
So good.
So that would be how I would do it if it was like, look, you have free reign in a simulation. How do you squeeze the most performance and maintain people's attitudes, right? When you feel like shit, terrible, you very low frustration tolerance.
I got my wisdom teeth out on Friday, and today, a little bit yesterday, was like the first time that I had like what I'm calling real food, like not blended dairy, high in sugar, like yogurt, ice cream, pudding kind of diet. And it's true, like my attitude completely changed last night because it was like my food intake, and it was just like my response to being able to eat something that I was excited about. It's yeah,
for sure. And like, as I'm thinking about this, I think it would be like the perfect. It wouldn't be hard, you would, but to like close every night with like something like a nice, like a hot tomato soup with almost like something pretty bulletproof, like a duck confit on it, something like that could just be garnished at the last minute. Do some, you could do, in the summer, you could do like a cold asparagus puree with, but smoked salmon on top. I mean, but like that idea of piecing those together so that you're making sure you're hitting all your marks. And you could even, if you were really going crazy, you'd have like little test tube racks with juice shots in it, stuff like that. And, the idea would be every few hours, give them a shot of something complex to keep that blood sugar going, which is, fuel. It's energy. It's going to keep them cooking, keep the crash. I think, keep that crash from just being so devastating, right? Like there's a reason why at the end of the night you're just like, you beat me, you can scream at me, whatever. Like,
I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm like, I enjoy these conversations with people that have your background too, because I'm through my experience, and I suppose it's just how I look at professionals in the industry. I look at chefs more through the lens of athletes and potentially musicians to a certain extent than I do like artists. And so I think that this idea of like taking care of your body, like looking at what you do as being a performer versus like the starving, laboring away artist type of thing is much more in line with kind of like how I view things.
Yeah, I think I started to say it earlier. Like, I'm not artistic at all, and I view cooking much more as like a trade, like being a carpenter, than I do like a guitarist. But I think like, I think until you know the rules, you ought not break them. And so like maybe what's art? I don't know if 5,000 people had all painted Jackson Pollocks when Jackson Pollock painted Jackson Pollock, does it mean anything? There's very few things that we're going to do that nobody's done. Like, I remember there's Koyak from CIA, Gerard Koyak. Like, you would, like, tell that guy, like, oh, I'm doing, cherries with foie gras. You'd be like, that's classic. The way you would say it's classic is just, like, calling you a dumbass. You're like, that's classic. Like, that's classic. Like, you don't know shit. And it's just, like, that's so valuable to have somebody who you respect that can do that, and tell you, like, that's classic. Like, you're not doing anything new. And that's why I always struggled to be, like, consider it, like, an art. Now, I guess there's definitely, I guess art is when something works and it's non-technical. I don't know how to define art. But if that's the case, like, yeah, I guess, like, breaking classic rules is art. But, like, that's got to come so far down the line, and I think there's, like, this push-pull and this fantasy, which is good, but, like, you kind of want to imagine yourself, like, already at the end. But then, like, as you actually get close to it, it's pretty terrifying, like when you're just a commis, it's awesome to imagine yourself as, like, a chef, like, ooh, like, I can't wait, like, when I'm running a kitchen. But then when you're, like, a sous chef and you get promoted to exec sous, it's like that chef role, it ain't fucking cute, it's scary. It's like, am I gonna be like, the crushing gravity sinks in. And I was kind of lucky in that that place that I was the executive chef at first, I only took that job because I was supposed to work 4 doubles and have 3 days off.
Okay.
And on, like, my second week, the chef kind of went down in flames, and he was like a kid I knew from culinary school, and it was a mess. And the owners were like, "Hey, we want to talk to you." He was like, "No, like, I'm here." No, I was working 3 doubles and had 4 days off, because at La Esquina I had 3 days off, and I was gonna work a double Thursday, a double Friday, double Saturday, double Sunday, and have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. And I was like, "You're done." Great, sold. Yeah. I'll do that. That's gonna be great. And I ended up 2 weeks later having to take over the restaurant. And, like, I didn't want it. I was like, I'm here to chill, man. Like, I'm here to party. Like, I'm single. I live in Brooklyn. I live in Williamsburg. Like, I don't want a lot of responsibility. But, I think, like, in my regard, it wasn't that crushing because, like, I didn't have that much fear of it. It was when I was already in the role that I was like, oh, I'm not good enough to be in this role. And I was, like, terrified to, like, modify the menu. She'd be like, let's come up with some dishes. Like, no, the menu's good. Like, we'll clean the kitchen really well. We'll optimize how it runs. But, like, I was, like, very afraid to, like, actually do the role that I was hired to do, because that was scary to me, because I was like, well, after I've been the chef of a restaurant, who will mentor? Like, it's like when you're a kid and you have to sleep on your own. You're like, well, who's going to cuddle me at night? And then, like, a week later, you're like, this is not, like, I'm fine. Like, but there's, like, this moment of, like, who's going to teach? I have a very vivid memory of a guy freaking out after eating at Alinea in the kitchen. And Grant asked him, how was his dinner? And he said, it was great. I worked my entire career at a 1 Michelin-starred restaurant, and I'm opening a restaurant right now, and they brought me here to celebrate. And around course 12, I realized I don't know shit.
Damn.
And he's, like, very sad. And everybody's kind of like, well, I hope you enjoyed your dinner. It's like, I can't forget that guy. Like, so many times in my life, I'm like, I'm that guy.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I jumped. I didn't, I tried to rush my way through my path. And, like, the best advice, like, I was very caught up in, like, I wanted to have big roles very young. And I did. I ended up I was running 4 Manhattan restaurants at I don't even know if I was 30.
Yeah.
But it didn't serve me well. I was angry. I was behaving because I was so insecure, because I sprinted through my career, which again, I achieved it. I worked at a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant. I was the Tornado at a 1 Michelin-star restaurant. I was the sous chef under Octar Nawab. I opened restaurants in Brooklyn. I was the executive chef. I was the chef de cuisine for a really prestigious restaurant group that had 4 restaurants in Manhattan. But I wasn't comfortable in the role, so I think I defaulted to what I thought a chef in that position who deserved it, right? So I met my girlfriend's kid, and that freaked me out. And she's like, she loves you. I don't know why you're freaking out. And I was like, well, anybody can trick a 4.5-year-old into liking him. The question is, can you deserve it? But can you be somebody who deserves it? Can you be somebody who deserves to have a kid want to see you? It's anybody can trick a 5-year-old. Anybody can trick someone. And in my head, it was the guys who deserve to be in this role, how would they act? They wouldn't take shit. They would stand up. They would demand. And those all bit me in the ass. I made a mess of it. The instead of trying to be the guy that deserved it, I was trying to pretend to be the guy that deserved it, because I rushed, and there were so many times I was I don't know shit. I'm scared, and I spent so much of my life and so much of my career scared that I'd be exposed. And the reality is I wasn't fooling Gabe Thompson. Gabe Thompson's a stud. He knew, I should have just called him and been oh my God, what would you do in my role? He would have loved to have taught me. That's why he promoted me so young. He's I'll mentor this guy. But instead of I got it. And I think my advice would be go slow and just be honest. Be enthusiastic, be honest, be genuine, be kind. Nobody expects you. Nobody's going to expect you to have all the answers. And they don't, that person sucks. People want to see themselves in people. They want to mentor and rub off on people and make an influence. And if you're, unfortunately for me, I spent a lot of my career, insecure, scared, angry, and trying to pretend. And, I tried to pretend to be somebody who didn't need to be taught anything. And, that's not somebody people want to mentor. Because, how am I going to leave myself in you? And I think it's really important. I had the toughness, but I had the toughness because I was pretending to be this. And if I had just been more vulnerable and honest, I think, it's hard to say my career would have been better, because I'm totally fine with my career, but I think I would have had more fun. I think I would have experienced more success. I don't know. I experienced a lot of success, but I think it would have been better. I think it would have been better, and it would have been. I think I would have left places on much better terms. I think people would have appreciated having helped me a lot more than they did. I think that although, when I was at Epicurean, we went from 4 prep crews doing prep in 4 restaurants to centralizing it, and we didn't have a single food issue. I was very proud of that. We actually stopped freezing proteins. We got these rotations. And so, it's hard to say that the food would have been better, but certainly I think it would have been a better journey, and it would have been healthier. It would have been with less conflict. And I just think that, I think it's important to really be very, I think most people, so in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's kind of 4 groups of steps. There's 12 steps, and they kind of work in 3s. So the second group is a self-audit, where you write down everything negative you've done, you refine it, and then you read it. You read it to another person, usually your sponsor. To me, that's the most important, the best part of recovery, because you go through I stole this from my grandmother, I stole drugs, I robbed this. You go through all your things that, shame. If we were in a therapeutic environment, they would say shame is the fear of rejection in the face of vulnerability. So you could have a 22-year-old gay kid and he's not ashamed to be gay during Pride Week in Chelsea. But when he goes home to Idaho and he's having dinner with his grandfather, he very well might be ashamed to be gay. He might be worried if he tells his grandfather he's gay, he'll turn their back on him, right? Rejection in the face of vulnerability. So, like, in recovery, we say you're only as dark as your secrets, right? Why? Because, well, when that group of steps where you unload all your secrets, and somebody at the end like gives you a hug and says like, look, like everybody is a work in progress, and like keep working, keep grinding, and like, you know, you're turning into an amazing person. When you realize like at your absolute worst you're still worthy of love, you become somewhat fearless. You know, there's this feeling of like knowing that like you kind of like all that shit doesn't matter and everybody has their insecurities, you know. And I think that provides tremendous value, and more and more as I get older and older, I become more and more grateful for that block, you know, that 4, 5, 6. I get more and more grateful for that, and I try and embrace it more and more, and I try and live a life with more vulnerability and more honesty. And everything just becomes tremendously easier. And that's not to say like I don't get mad, I don't get angry, I don't lie. You know, everybody does all those things. You know, the question is like, lie to who?
Mm-hmm.
Angry what? You know, one of my flaws is it's very difficult for me to stop being angry once I'm angry. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get, it's hard. It's
Sure.
something, and I hate it about myself. You know, it's like being a messy cook. It's like, you know, but, you know, you ask the best cooks. You ask Eric or Perry, he's probably like, I'm a messy cook. You're like, dude, that looks flawless. Like, oh, so, you know, so it's like, by what standard? You know, it's like, I'm not like
Relative.
my mom where she's used every pot in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And there's like flies, and, you know, but I still, by my standard, I look over at like, I bet if I cooked next to you, I'd be like doing triple, like, oh, you know, like, I'm sure you're a very tight and clean cook.
I
you
try.
know? And,
I try.
yeah, well, we all have flaws, you know, and it's the type of thing where it's, you know, part of me wants to sit here and tell you I'm the cleanest cook ever, you know, and that's my own insecurities. And, but, like, you don't give a shit. We're like, whatever, bro. Like,
Totally.
I mean, you might give a shit if they're station mates, but, you know, like.
But that's the thing is that, again, harkening back to the point you made earlier, like, I would give you shit about it, you would give me shit about something else, and then we would just, like, come back the next day and do it again.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'm sorry that the station's messy, but your knife work. Are you left-handed?
No,
Have you tried?
I'm not. Have
you tried?
No, I'm not. I throw frisbee with my left hand. There's a couple weird things that I'm ambidextrous with. I have not tried that yet. That's an interesting challenge.
You completely missed a joke. You'd be a good person to fuck with. So when somebody's cutting something, you're like, are you left-handed? No, it's like, tried? You might be. This looks pretty bad.
Shit. So funny. The last chef I worked for had this thing of that's peak station partner success when you guys are razzing each other, and you can just kind of like, you go into service and you're just like, you're talking shit about each other, but it's like, it's still really intense, but yeah.
I've had a few good. I've had one was with a guy. I spoke very little Spanish, and he spoke very little English. And the two of us used to just wreck the plancha station at La Esquina. This was La Esquina in Williamsburg, outdoor dining project. I mean, the printer just never stopped. And he and I, almost zero verbal communication. And we just, that was like mechanically one of my finest points as a cook. I mean, we were just an inexhaustible stream of food. Like, we were just erupting food. Even to the point where Akhtar, who never gave any compliments, he was like, Steven, I won't tell you how you live your life, but you might want to consider marrying that man. Like, you two. He's like, I don't know if there's anybody else that can carry you across the finish line. You know, like, but
that's
he was
awesome.
like, we didn't talk. Like, we didn't, like, we just, like, we both just looked at each other, and I was like, there's nobody else I want on my station. He felt the same way. We just worked really well together, and it's like that type of chemistry is really fun. It's very special. Like, those are the things that, like, people I think that people rob themselves of that when they're so quick to like be unforgiving and leave before they leave and sabotage because like somebody in the kitchen was mean to them or whatever. And like there's not everything's going to be perfect. Like much of work sucks, which is why they pay you to do it.
Mm. I want to transition to some rapid fire questions, and then I'm going to let you get back to your night.
Sure.
Is there a book that's been particularly impactful to your career?
Not to my career, but I just read Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, which is a great book. I've read all his books. And, you know, I think those kind of like the 10,000 hours, like that, you know, Outliers, things like that were helpful to me. I remember being really relieved, like, you know, you see about hockey and sports and all that and thinking like, oh, good thing I'm in the culinary world where like I could just do my 10,000 hours, you know, like I can just grind it out on my birthday. No, not particularly.
Okay.
I think I was just really lucky.
Is there a technique or I'm gonna adjust this to your expertise of like either like athlete or type of diet that you're still intimidated by, or that you would kind of see as like, oh, this is an interesting challenge, I'd want to learn more about this and take this on?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, right? And I still, you know, I've done a ton of weight cuts, but that's still scary. Like, I still feel a crushing sense of responsibility. Like, what if this doesn't go well and this guy misses weight? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, you know, there's always something that's going to be fucking scary. That doesn't go away, right? Like, when you're walking into a new restaurant to stage, that's a scary feeling. You know, like, to me, walking into a restaurant to stage, like, obviously the role I would be expected to fill is, like, it's not executive chef, it's CDC. So that would be very scary to me. To, like, stage for a CDC role at name it would be scary to me. And walking into stage to be a Colmy was scary to me. And walking into the New York Open to do jiu-jitsu is scary to me. And you know, there's always these opportunities to fail, and just doing scary things it's so important. And always be scared, you know, like, but do it. You know, I think there's tremendous value in like taking a cage fight. Like, you know, there are people, you learn so much between like all of these disciplines. Like, you watch somebody go down in flames and you can learn so much about them. Watch someone get their ass beat in a fight and you could like people strike these deals where they say, I'll stop trying to win if you stop trying to hurt me. And the same thing happens to a cook when he's going down in flames, where it's just like, you know, he's just broken. He's just, all right, what's yeah, chef. You know, and it's like, I'm still scared that I'm going to fail people. And I was scared that I would fail people when I was a Colmy. I was scared when I'd fail people as a chef de partie. I was scared as a chef that I'd fail the owners. You know, and I think that's like, maybe that's because I'm a nurturer. I don't know. Like, maybe there's cooks out there that are like, I don't know, you know what you got when you hire me, fucking your problem. That's right. Not me. I've never had that type of confidence. But I think it's like that insecurity and that fear like makes me rise to the moment. You know, like, if you're going to get in your underwear and punch someone in their skull until they go unconscious, and my job is to make sure you make weight for it. If you don't make weight, like, I mean, I've just robbed you. Like, oh my God. Yep. You know, so it's like, that's scary to me. And as far as the diet goes, with those guys, we're really just counting calories in and calories out and putting a heart rate monitor on them. So like, unless my math is wrong. But, you know, then there's like the question of like, we're going to give them a bunch of tap water, then we're going to switch to distilled water, we're going to drain them of minerals, and then they're going to get in a hot bath, and I have to be with them because their blood pressure can drop and they can go unconscious. But like, that component is also like, maybe I didn't give them enough carbs and enough energy during their training, and they just broke down, they couldn't tolerate the heat, and they just, you know, and it's like, that's still very scary to me, right? The idea that I could fail somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're a good chef, a good person, a good coach, a good anything, like, you should never be free of that fear. And certainly you can't half-ass it because of it, you know?
No.
Yeah. I'm kind of always scared.
Yeah.
I'm kind of always scared.
Yeah.
You know? I'm not scared when I compete though. I kind of don't give a shit about myself. I think that's common with like chefs. We'll make somebody like, the edamame puree with a really nice piece of bread, and then we'll be like, "Oh, are you going to talk about? Yeah, give me some burrito." Like,
exactly.
I'm a terrible piece of shit. I don't deserve this.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this should apply from your time when you were more in that kind of exploratory phase, and it might change your answer. But I like to ask this hypothetical of you somehow get a call right after this interview that you've won an all expenses paid trip to eat at your dream restaurant, and when you get there to eat dinner, there's someone you've always wanted to talk to waiting to have dinner with you. What restaurant is it, and who is that person?
I mean, I think like it would be hard to like not say like a really crazy menu at like La Bernardin, right? Mm-hmm. But like I really like Blue Hill at Stone Barns. I think that might be one of the best restaurants ever. And the person, I'm lucky in that I'm just super aggressive and I kind of form those relationships, and I just harass people. So I get those, but I guess there's no criteria. It's not like a chef.
I even say it can be living or dead. I'm just interested in seeing what is the dinner guest that would be like, holy shit, that'd be dope.
Honestly, I think Barack Obama, because I think that he's incredible, right? I think he's very well spoken. And then, not to get political or anything, but I remember several times, and I'm not super political, but I remember thinking several times through the Trump administration, how did anybody have any criticisms of Barack Obama? He's so polished and funny and
yep.
I just kind of I just think he's a super interesting guy. Obviously he is, right? But I think it would be cool to meet him, and I also think it would be cool to meet a lot of I think honestly him or Malcolm Gladwell. I think listening to Malcolm Gladwell lecture, listening to his TED Talks and stuff, you get the impression that he's just bottomless. So I think probably either him or Malcolm Gladwell. I think the chances of me getting dinner with Malcolm Gladwell are exponentially higher, but still long shots on both. But.
Totally. Steven, this has been great, and I really, really appreciate you taking more time than I told you this would take, but I really, really had a good time, and I think that everybody who's listening to this had a lot of good takeaways. Is there anything you want to leave people with? Do you want to, if people have questions, where should they reach out to you? I'm obviously going to link your Instagram page and the Salt and Acid site down below, but anything you want to leave people with or direct people towards?
No, I mean, I think if you want to reach out to me, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. You can DM me on Instagram or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I mean, these days I'm fucking old, man. I'm old. I wrestle. I do a tasting menu here and there. I stock some people's fridges. I don't know that I'm a great mentor. I don't have a lot of connections. There's definitely go to another podcast and grab one of those people. But I'm easy to get a hold of. I mean, if you need help with your triangle choke, I can mentor you there. But I got a good guillotine, But as far as I think my ability to pull strings in the industry is. I think those days are behind me.
I certainly hope that my audience doesn't reach out to podcast guests and ask, hey, can you get me a job here? Or can you do that? They don't even do that with me. I'm very I don't enjoy that type of, networking and all these things that we've been talking about that we hold in such high regard, put in the hours, nurture people, it's about relationships and being kind and all that stuff. And that type of interaction is just the opposite of that. But I just think I certainly enjoy your perspective, and always hearing your war stories is always a joy, and I get a ton of value from it. So thanks again.
No shortage of horror stories. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
What's up? Justin here again. Because, if you're still listening, you didn't not like this episode, right? And if that's the case, I'd like to think that you'd get value from the other work that I share here online. It's all focused on helping chefs and hospitality professionals perform better. If you don't have a lot of time, the best place to start is with the email newsletter that I write every single week called the 80/20 Edge. That's where I share knowledge on sharpening your skills, asymmetric upside, and exploring the industry beyond the status quo. And I say it saves time because I include all of the content that I publish that week all in one place as kind of a weekly digest of sorts. Next up, you should check out my YouTube channel for gear reviews, clips from podcasts just like this one, and documented experiences from some of the best restaurants in the world. And lastly, if you'd like to learn about my intense cohort-based professional development focused course, get coaching from me to help you make your next move, or just support the show, you can check out justinkhanna.com/support. And if you do support this show already, that's greatly appreciated. Thank you. Finally, it really does help to share a review of this show on Apple Podcasts to help the podcast universe know that people like us like shows like this. And until the next episode, my name is Justin Khanna, and I hope you have a good one.